You're here.
I'm here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
We met via Instagram 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
And you have one of the most interesting stories of anyone. And I think you know this, but you're not super aware of it because you don't talk about, you tell people, people are just always finding out little fun facts about you.
It's true.
Wait, you did that? True. Wait, you did this? Wait, what? So I would like to, give a quick intro of you as a photographer. And then I'm just going to start to dive into all my most curious questions and kind of get your life story more available.
Sure. Well, I'm John Brown. I'm a photographer from Nashville. And I've been doing it 5 years full time and lived in Nashville 11 years next month.
And you're super creative. You look at the world really as a canvas. I always hate when people say that, but there's nothing, we can't go to Home Depot. We can't go anywhere without you being it'd be really cool is if we inverted this and then we did a double lockdown and then we did a double exposure and then a triple exposure gets a Fanta black wall,
I don't think I've realized that the way I see things was different until every year it kind of becomes more clear. It's oh, maybe I am a little different, but I'm okay with it. It's been I've learned a lot about myself this year, especially because of COVID and experiencing depression for the first time and going to a therapist and learning a bunch of stuff about myself. But it's kind of funny learning that I'm what is called a highly sensitive person, and it's very sensory. So having somebody else point that out is pretty funny because I thought it was kind of normal that I could walk through a parking lot and see every single flat tire or drive down the interstate and see every single flat tire effortlessly. They scream at me. But apparently that's not the case. Not everybody does that. Yeah. So I'm very visual, and I guess it makes sense with what I do for work.
So I want to start at the beginning. Yeah. You're from a small town in Tennessee.
I am. I was born in Germany, and I grew up in Belgium until I was 8 on a military base. But both my parents are from Shelbyville, Tennessee. So I kind of had this interesting change, growing up abroad, where each neighbor was from a different country, to moving to Shelbyville, Tennessee, where I think my high school class was 99 people, and 5 were black people, and that was it. That was Shelbyville. That was it. It was very strange growing up around such diverse people who, there was always something to celebrate. We were always doing things together. My dad would rent a tent and put it out in front of all these houses, and all these people would bring food from different countries. And then moving to Shelbyville, and we sometimes it was pretty normal to not even know your neighbors. It was interesting. It's quite a change.
And what do you think that did to you? Now that you look back, obviously as a kid, you don't know what that does, but what did it change in your head?
Man, I think it definitely, growing up abroad definitely made me, it made it normal to want to talk to people, even if I didn't know them. And I went through a shy phase in high school. It was more about girls. I was shy around girls, but I still talked to everybody. My brother's the same way. My older brother's the same way. And I think that has been a quality or a trait, whatever you want to call it, that has helped me more in life than anything else. Just genuinely being curious about who people are, I think has really added to my life, because you can't not be nice when you're just wanting to hear someone's story. Mean people don't want to hear anything about you, but kind people do. And And I think it makes people feel good. Like when someone wants to hear, like, where have you been? Like, what's your walk in life been like? How has it treated you? What have you experienced? So it's still really funny to end up in a job where part of my job is like learning what someone's story is.
So Shelbyville,
Shovel as the natives.
till what age?
I moved out the first time when I was 21.
Wow. Wait, so what'd you do at 18?
I stayed home, went to Motlow State Community College nearby.
Trying to get a degree in.
Yeah, my parents didn't want me to move out yet.
What were you trying to get a degree in?
Oh, I first majored in mechanical engineering, and I realized I wasn't very good at math, so I changed to business administration, and I realized I wasn't very good at math still. So there was a semester where my only classes were a 1 hour credit guitar theory class and a remedial math class. And that was my entire semester. I had a 4 hour semester. And then
so you were your parents' pride and joy.
Oh, they were super happy. They were super thrilled. Like, this kid's going places. Glad he's doing basic math and playing on a guitar. I ran into the art professor, and he probably told everybody this, like, take an art class, join the art club. But I've always been, I always like to draw. I've always liked music. I just never thought that I could, like, make a living with any of that. But I took an art class, and he was a brilliant art teacher, art professor. It makes me sad. I don't exactly know what his situation is now, but he was definitely underrated and underpaid because he was still working a side job at JCPenney's. And he's like this amazing art professor. I mean, he changed my life. And the only reason I can take a decent photo is because I had him. And because the idea of composition was something he was really, really passionate about. It's like he didn't care how technical or how detailed your work was. If you didn't fill the space in an interesting way, he was pretty upset about it. So he was like, he hammered that concept into our heads. And so that's why I think when I first picked up a camera, even though I had no idea how to expose properly, like, I had a decent understanding of, like, composition.
And so at this point, you're 18 or 19?
I was probably 19, 20.
And you decide, I want to be a photographer because I'm good at this, I'm interested?
No, I still didn't even own a camera at this point. I ended up changing my major to art. And then when I transferred, the big thing in Shelbyville is you go to Motlow State, it's a community college, it's less expensive. You finish your 2 year there, and then you transfer to MTSU. So it saves you a bunch of money. You still get the same associate degree or whatever, and it's closer to home. So I transferred to MTSU after getting my 2 year in 3 years, and they had some kind of weird program where I was literally majoring in art and music. Literally, not like studio art with a emphasis on blah blah blah. Art and music, and it was through something in New York, and I just remember, like, you guys are letting me do this. Like, I think they just wanted money. I mean, the MTSU is the biggest school in the state now. They have more students than anybody, and not throwing shade at them, they have some amazing programs, but.
Do you think college in general is just stupid for artists?
What was that?
Do you think college in general is just stupid for artists?
I would encourage anyone, if they want to make a living creatively, at least take some art classes somewhere, but don't go to an art college because they are insanely expensive. But I mean, I would not trade the classes I had with that art professor for the world, but they were also like, $2,000 a year or something like that. I mean, it was pretty inexpensive. But even more than that, if you have natural skill, you can watch YouTube, you can Google it, you can make friends that are doing it. I would take business classes.
Yeah, because that's probably why we're friends. I've always understood business.
And I have not.
Okay, so that's 20 or 21.
Yeah.
And then you decide I'm going to be a truck driver.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's still weird. It's still such a strange thing. It's I don't know. I had all these plans, right? Everybody does. Like, I had a plan, like, I'm going to finish college in 4 years and I'm going to have a career and things are going to work out and I'm going to get married and own a home and all this stuff. I had it all figured out. And then, I changed my major 3 times. This school isn't what I thought it would be. These classes aren't what I thought it would be. But, I guess back to your point, I didn't decide I was going to be a truck driver. I think life kind of decided that. And, 2007, 2008, we had a recession. I didn't really know much about that. Yeah. I really wasn't paying much attention to that. I was more focused on probably dating.
On art and music.
Yeah. So I started MTSU. I moved out to Murfreesboro. That's the first time I moved out of my parents' house. And my mom gets really sick. Thought she was going to die. And I felt partially responsible because I had moved out. Wasn't my fault. It felt like it for about a year. But yeah, I had never really experienced anything difficult before, or like tragic or heavy, beyond like just some old family passing away, which felt pretty normal. Like, yeah, he was 88. He lived a good life, This felt different. This rocked my whole world, and I could read a page and I could not absorb any of it. Like, it was probably like a depression kind of thing. I don't really know. I didn't really seek help. So I flunked out my first semester at MTSU, ended up moving back home, worked at Colleen's Cottage, which was 0.2 miles from my parents' house. And I think she honestly just felt bad for me and gave me a job because I couldn't find a job anywhere. And I'm the only guy. I'm the only guy that ever worked there. They sold like wedding presents and like trinkets and stuff. And yeah, not a proud moment for me. I don't know.
Did you learn anything from that job?
People like to buy wedding stuff, I guess, She was really nice to me. I think she knew it wasn't for me. And she could tell that. So she wasn't surprised when I moved on to something else. But that something else was driving a semi-truck. My dad and my brother had been driving already. And my dad came to see me at Colleen's Cottage one day and just kind of suggested it. Like, have you ever thought about driving? And I just thought that was the craziest thing. Like, I think my first thought was like, yeah, about as much as I've thought about trying to be an astronaut next year. Like, it just seemed like, what universe am I a truck driver? Like, that's crazy. But I thought about it for 10 minutes. Like, wow, this would get me away.
I thought you were to say, I thought about it for a few weeks.
10 minutes.
Well, anyway, 10 minutes later.
I'm looking around in this gift shop, and I'm like, I don't really like my life here. I had an awful relationship with someone that, to my face, called me a failure and left me for other guys in front of me twice.
So you got back together?
Yeah, man, I had like no confidence at this point.
Yeah.
Because I was a failure. I felt like one. I didn't need her to tell me that. But it was a weird time.
How did the conversation go when that didn't work out and she wanted to get back with you?
What are the chances that she'll see this? I pray for her a lot. It's fine. We're still Facebook friends, and whatever. I don't care. Yeah, because part of me, the petty part of me, is like, yeah, she's gonna get to see how awesome my life is now.
Cool. Well, now you're talking about her on a podcast. So tell me, like, how did she approach it? Like, hey, I know I called you a failure to your face.
Oh no, she's never done anything like that.
Well, how did she like approach you? It was like, how did this conversation go?
I don't remember. I think it's been so long. It was probably like an argument about something dumb. And I wouldn't say I was super mature at that point, but she was definitely not mature. So it was probably the least healthy relationship I've ever had. But it's like, yeah, I'm 20, 21, whatever. It's like everybody's a mess at 20 and 21.
That's when I had my least healthy relationship. She was like 27, I think, and I was 21.
Yeah,
and I wasn't the unhealthy one.
So yeah, I thought about it for 10 minutes. Like, I have nothing great happening here. Like, what do I have to lose at this point? So I went to school for 11 weeks, and I got my CDL, my Class A, and then I got to train with my brother for 6 weeks, which was really cool. And then I think it was the week of Christmas, 2007, I'm driving a semi-truck by myself through the gorge in North Carolina, which is where Tennessee crosses over into North Carolina on 40 East. And it is like mountains. And thank God somebody let me borrow their CB radio, because somebody called over the radio, hey, there's a tree down in the left lane. And through the gorge, the trucks are actually supposed to drive in the left lane. And so I got over, and if it wasn't for that, I would have literally plowed into this giant tree.
In your first week?
Yeah, and probably gone off a cliff, So it was a heck of a start. That first week was pretty crazy. But I did that for a year and a half and went pretty much every state east of the Mississippi. I went to Texas, came to Texas a few times, got to drive to California once with my dad and back.
And what was the kind of pay? What were the hours? And then what did it do to your body? Like, was it bad to be sitting that long
I think it would be for anybody else. I was only 20. So I think, when you're that young, you eat like crap. It doesn't really matter. Every other guy that I saw that was a driver, actually every other person that I saw that was a driver was like heavier. And, you're sitting for hours at a time.
Fluffier.
Yeah, fluffier. Curvy. I would drive usually Monday through Friday. I worked for a really nice company too, Nationwide Express. So they would try to have me home every weekend. How much time that would be would kind of vary, but I definitely had a few weekends where it's like, oh, I'm home Saturday and Sunday, and I don't leave till Monday. But sometimes, you have enough time to sleep, and then you go back, depending on when the loads need to leave. It was a weird job. It's kind of funny how it ends up tying into my photography, though, because that was the time that phones started having cameras, and I was a creative person, and I'd have a lot of downtime, and so I took photos of some random stuff. I still have a folder on Facebook. It's like my trucking career, and a few photos were like, oh, that's still a good photo to me now. Yeah, there's a whole bit about how that connects. It's kind of funny. But I started driving as this really broken, no confidence, no future ahead of me guy. Like, oh, I guess this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And then the day that I drove to Long Island, New York, and had been awake like 30 hours and got lost because GPS was fairly new. And I almost went through the Lincoln Tunnel, but I was too tall. But they have like a way to turn around. But I was like in New York City traffic, driving a 80,000 pound semi truck and trying to talk to my dispatcher on one phone while shifting a 10 speed in one hand while shifting a 10 speed in the other. And I made it, and I get there and I parallel park, and it just hit me like, man, if I can do this, I can probably do a lot of other things. And that was kind of like a starting point of me becoming more confident in myself.
Interesting. So it was just like, yeah, because I hear about that moment. I think I'd rather die. I mean, New York City,
Well,
all these
I was
cars,
gonna
all these
die.
people. My truck can't fit, and I had to somehow turn around, and like turning around 18-wheelers seems impossible. And because you overcame it, you were like, instead of just being like, this job sucks, I give up, you were like, cool, I can do other hard things in life.
Yeah. I've always been kind of an optimistic person. I don't really know where that comes from. I think maybe I'm sure it ties into my parents. They've never been. My dad's experienced a lot of difficult things, but he's never been the type to let it hold him back or like want pity from people. I mean, his dad died when he was 5, and he grew up with a single mom, my grandmother, and she worked really hard and was very supportive. He was in a band, back in the day. And she was always positive, always happy, always upbeat. And I think that's where it comes from. So I'll have my moments. I'll have my moments where I'm stressed out and sad or whatever, but I've always been able to hold on to hope, like things will get better. This will work out somehow. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I'd be here, honestly. I certainly would have gotten out of that truck. I'd still be driving it probably, and probably have an extra 100 pounds on me.
All right, so you're a truck driver at 21, which is pretty unheard of, right?
I was the youngest driver at Nationwide, definitely. There might have been a few others. I never met them, like out in the world. It was mostly older people.
Got it. And what were truckers like? What was that life like?
I don't know. It's like its own little subculture. I think times are different for truckers. Even when I was in, I think it kind of opened up to more types of people, and also the recession, like people just needed to find jobs. So I met some people that it's like, I can't believe you're a trucker. They didn't fit the stereotype. They didn't look the part. I definitely didn't. But people got to work. But it's its own little world, and it's pretty bizarre. And you just meet some interesting people, all walks of life. Some troubled people too. I saw drugs. I saw prostitution. I saw like child sex trafficking. Like had to call the police. I got into my first fight ever. My one and only fight ever was when I was a trucker because a guy tried to rob me.
Another trucker?
No, I think he was a drug addict.
Oh, okay.
And thankfully I had one of those mag lights. That's the only reason that was awful. It was an awful day. It's not the brightest part of society. I will say that. You meet some nice people. A lot of them work really hard, but it's a hard life. You're by yourself a lot. I don't think we're made to be by ourselves that much. But I have a lot of respect for people that do it because it has to be done. Like somebody has to do it, but you'd see couples doing it together. That always made me feel a little bit better. Like they'd have like the real big trucks. And it's like, that's nice. And sometimes you'd see team drivers, but yeah.
What do you make? What's your monthly salary?
So you get paid by the mile. At least I did. I got paid by the mile. And I drove for a company, so I didn't own the truck. I didn't have to pay for fuel. So you get paid less. If you're having to pay for your fuel, you get paid a whole lot more because you got to pay for the fuel. But I think I started at 29 cents a mile. And then at most I was making 32 cents a mile.
And how many miles were you driving a day? Or a month?
A week, it'd be weekly.
Okay.
So I get paid every week at the end. I think the longest I drove in a week was about 4,200 miles.
So
It was over 4,000. It was a lot. That was a lot. That was a long week. And so the checks are pretty great for a 21-year-old.
So you're making like 40 grand a year-ish?
I made, let's see, I think I made 32 in the beginning to end year, but I got a raise like in the middle as well. So that was kind of nice. But I made like 32,000. And
you were excited about that?
I mean, it seemed cool. I didn't hold on to any of it. I don't even know what I bought. I had like nothing to show.
I guess like how would you hold on to 32 grand is what I'm trying. Like,
I mean, I paid no rent. I lived at home still.
Okay.
But somehow I managed to spend it all.
I mean, yeah, it's not a lot of money to spend is the point I'm trying to make. You're
it's really
like, man,
not.
I just blew that. I'm like,
well, it's funny hearing, I feel that way now. I didn't grow up with money. I grew up with, we had enough, and sometimes we had more. My dad worked really hard, was in the military 25 years, and retired, and then went into corporate America. And we definitely had more when he was working in corporate, but he's always been fairly frugal. We'd have what we needed. Sometimes we get other things, but I've 30 in a year for a long time. That sounded like a lot. And when I made 40 one year, it's like, wow. But then I'm like, wait, why do I feel so stressed out? Like this is $40,000 in a year. This should be great. And it's like, oh yeah, I live in Nashville.
It's like, that's still below like what it takes to live.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of glad that I can see dollars in that way. Like I feel like I know what a dollar is worth. So nobody's ever going to call me spoiled.
You get to like 300, 400, 500 grand a year. Do you think that you'll change as far as spending habits, or do you think that you'll just store it away?
I think I would be buying a lot of coffee, that's for sure. But man, my cousin was in the NFL for 8 years. And I think if you Google him, I think it says that he made like 22 million or something like that. And have
you ever asked him what he made, or do you just go off of Google?
I went off Google. I don't like to,
because my net worth's 100 million according to Google.
Right. I feel pretty confident that that's accurate.
Yeah.
8 years, always on the field. Even if he made 10, it's not really relevant. He made a lot of money. And hearing his perspective,
he made over 40 grand a year.
Yeah, he did. He made more than me, I'm pretty sure. Hearing his perspective on money was kind of a life-changing thing for me. So if he didn't buy a Ferrari, he didn't buy a ridiculous house. He's pretty frugal. I mean, he has a nice house, but it's like you wouldn't look at it and think, oh, there must be an NFL player that lives here. Like you would never think that. He drives a pickup truck. Like, I love that about him. Like, he did buy a fishing boat, but it's like you bought a fishing boat.
Yeah, it's not like you bought a yacht.
No, or a sports boat or whatever. He's a really good guy. He's a good man. He even told me, like, sometimes I wish I didn't have all this because it's a challenge to have, like, a Christian walk and use these resources well. And that was, like, really awesome to hear. So I don't know. I think if I ever ran into money like that, I would probably try to think, how is this going to affect people around me, or how can I affect people around me in a way that's like not just like giving them money, but ways that are like long lasting.
Yeah, like Rick Ross talks about, like his reason for having a portfolio of companies is that when people in his family want to make money,
gives them a job.
Yeah, it gives them a job, and it gives them flexibility to move to different companies. So as they get good at something, it's like, oh, you're good at marketing. Well, you could go do marketing at Wingstop, or you could do marketing at this music group or whatever, like this rental car place or my Airbnbs or whatever the case is. And so he gives them like a portfolio to work in as long as they've shown up and said, I want to work. I want to make a lot of money, but I want to work.
Right. I don't know, but my views on money have definitely changed over the years. The older I've gotten, there are certain things that I really like. Like I've always liked my cars, but they're not even like that crazy. I mean, I drive a 2006 F-150, and like I love it.
You're so
I
rich.
take good care of it. Like it's clean. People never think it's 14 years old, and I think that's something I get from my dad.
Well, you have 2018 rims on it.
Right. Craigslist, $200.
Flats on them.
Yeah. But I think as much as I love Porsches, I don't think I could ever justify buying a new one, at least, maybe an old one or something. But I've just seen too much. I've seen too much hanging out with the church that I'm a part of and the ways that they're helping people around the world. It's like I just can't. I wouldn't be able to do it because it's just. It would be fun for a minute, but just knowing like, wow, I could have spent that $50,000 on, building a school in El Salvador.
All right, so let me give you another perspective to this.
Yeah.
You spend $50,000 on the Porsche, you drive it for 2 years, and then you sell it for $55,000. Were you wiser? Was that a wise decision because you got to enjoy your Porsche, which you love? You didn't have any cash tied into it because you financed it. And then when you sold it, you made a profit on it, which probably paid for your maintenance and everything else to a slight loss. So it really came out to you spent a few grand and you had a Porsche for a couple of years.
Man, I don't know. That's, I'm not there yet. So when I get there and I buy one, what I think about it.
Because, I mean, that's the way I look at it is like I see the same things you do of like the issues in the world. My thing's water. I'm going to provide water to everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, why am I spending $10,000 here and $10,000 here when I could be building, like $10,000 is what it costs to build a well. And it's like, man, like that's another well. That's another well. That's another well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if they're good investments or they're things I use for a really long time, or they help me make more money so that I can build more wells.
Right.
And as long as I'm never putting off donating, one of my good friends has been going through a really tough time since COVID because he works at live events. And he's like he's worked with Bruno Mars and David Blaine and like everybody in live events. But he's had a really difficult time because that is, he's as expert as experts get.
Right.
And he made an intro to me to a guy that we've done, built a software together that we're now selling. And so I, last night, I just ran payroll and gave him money.
Yeah.
And even though I had most money I've made, if I had to send out to pay Rabbit's bills, I was like, I don't want to withhold giving people, I want to just give him a thank you out of nowhere for what he's done for making this intro for me and the work he's done. And so I know that in previous times I've been in the habit of saying, I'm going to wait until I have enough money to give a donation. Or I'm going to wait until, and so it's okay, no matter if it's $1 or 10,000, 10%, 15%, just always giving in the moment and then figuring out later.
Right.
And so, I'm somebody who plans to buy a $150,000 car relatively soon.
Yeah.
And I'm not buying a car that I think is going to depreciate. I'm going to buy a car that I think I'll be able to sell for more or the same amount that I paid.
Yeah.
And then when I finance that out, I'm like, okay, cool. It's like I locked up $30,000 because I'll probably have to put a good amount down. It's my first time buying a car, maybe $50,000, $60,000. But if I sell for what I paid, then it's like, cool. I ended up saving, instead of blowing that money, I put it in kind of in an investment. I had a ton of fun. I produced a ton of content, made a bunch of relationships, joined exotic car clubs, made more money.
Yeah.
There's this sub picture where it's I don't think I'm being completely selfish and being a terrible human and not helping the world by driving a $200,000 car.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with people, buying nice cars.
Yeah, and you appreciate it like it's art, and that's why I don't.
Honestly, if I was gonna do something, I'd probably want to buy, an old Beamer and just make it the way I want to make it. Because I'm not really the kind I hope my truck lasts forever. The one I have now.
Yeah.
I'm not the type that's gonna like, oh, it's got 200,000, 300,000 miles.
It's always
on it.
been
I better
weird to
sell
me.
it. I'm just gonna like keep it until it literally won't run anymore because I have like this weird loyalty.
And I think you would have been able to do that if you weren't T-boned in the Ranger.
Yeah, I would have.
Because you did a bunch of work in that thing yourself.
Yeah, and it saved my life, thankfully. Tina Fey won. I named my cars.
But the same name, right?
No, I've the White Ranger. I just always had a joke like, yeah, she's a hardworking white woman, so I called her Tina Fey. And it got wrecked. I got T-boned by a 15-passenger church van after leaving church. And somehow none of my ribs were broken. Nothing was broken. It was just all like soft tissue.
And you shot a wedding a day later, right?
In Pennsylvania, yeah, in a lot of pain. It was a good friend. They had already paid all the money. And thankfully, it was my dad rented a car for me, which was nice because I didn't have the money to do it. But I used that money that she paid me to replace the brakes in my Ranger. And if I hadn't have done that, they were so bad, I don't think I slowed down enough to where the van's first point of impact was my front fender and not my door.
Got it.
'Cause I probably would have been dead. I mean, just dead as dead can be, you know. So the White Ranger was Tina Fey. I got a Subaru after that. I named it Leslie Nope. It was a lemon. It needed a lot of work. I had a Ford Explorer after that. Named it Tina Belcher.
Who's Tina Belcher?
She's a character from Bob's Burgers. It's a cartoon.
I've never seen it.
I don't even know how to explain
really
that.
good and educational.
Yeah. Both of those were lemons. So I
Where did you buy them from?
the Subaru I found on Craigslist. The Explorer I bought from a friend of my dad's. And it had like some weird electrical issues. If you turn on your headlights, when you turn on the air conditioning, the headlights would go bright and the air conditioning wouldn't come on. And then if you let it sit for a minute, eventually it would come on and then the headlights would go back to normal. But if you turned it off and turned it back on, it would start all over again. And I was like, I have no idea what's happening with these wires and this
It's
thing.
like, how do you even trouble? Like, if you to post that on Reddit, people would be like, "Oh, what?"
I talked to a mechanic friend of mine, and when I mentioned it, he just was like, "Bro, just get rid of it." Like the hours you could end up paying for me to just figure out what's wrong with it is like it's not even worth it. So I got my I bought the truck I have now from a friend. It's my first time having a car payment, but at least I'm not worried about having to replace an engine or air conditioning that affects my headlights. So.
Yeah. Okay, so 21, truck driver. You leave that when you're how old?
I think I was 22 when I left.
So you're 22. You move back to Nashville.
Moved to Nashville for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And do you go to college, or do you just move there to do what?
Yeah, I had a crazy day. I was hauling. So I had slowly made a circle of friends in Nashville because when I was home, I would go to Nashville to church with my old roommate that I had in Murfreesboro, my first roommate ever. And when I was home, so when I quit, well, hold on, let me back up. So I was hauling hazmat, hazardous material. 40,
Already a good start.
Yeah, 40. I was a full load, so with the truck and the trailer and the load, it was 80,000 pounds, but I was hauling 47,000 pounds of acid behind me. Just picked it up in Kentucky, was supposed to drive it to Florida, and I'm on the, I think it's the Blue Ridge Parkway is what it's called, and some guy in a pickup truck comes over into my lane a little bit, so I had to go on the shoulder, which was fine. I like honk at him, and he gets back over, but the problem was there was a bridge right in front of us. So I get back over, but you can't swerve. You can't swerve in a semi. It doesn't work that way. That's like a death sentence. So I inch back over, and I thought I hit the bridge because I heard a pop, but I think the tires kicked up like a loose piece of asphalt. but I was really close to hitting this bridge, and I would have been a goner. So I pull into a truck stop, like just a mile down the road, and my arms hurt, like right here from my forearms from squeezing the steering wheel so tight. And I called my VP of safety, Sandy. Her name was Sandy. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And she was like, okay, well, do you think you can drive it back to Shelbyville? I'm like, I think so. She's like, all right, well, take all the time you need to chill out, go get a coffee, whatever. Bring it whenever you can. I'm like, okay. So I drove through Nashville. And what was funny is, like, I had driven through Nashville 1,000 times. And I always thought, like, I want to live there, but that just seems impossible. And I had made this friend. His name was Ryan. He's a music teacher at this really high-end private school. Really cool dude, just super nice. We hit it off really well, and he'd call me once in a while to check on me on the road. And he's like, "Man, you got to get out of this truck. Like, you need to move up here." And he would say that, and it's like, okay, but I don't know how to do that. Like, there's so many things that I had to figure out. And so I call him, kind of upset because I almost died. And like, man, I just quit my job. And he's like, all right, we'll move in. So he gave me a free place to stay. So I literally drive to Shelbyville, drop off this truck, go get my last check. They were nice enough. They went ahead and wrote me like the check right then. I go home, I pack up all my stuff, and my parents are like freaking out. They're like, well, you're moving to Nashville? Like, this is so out of character for me to do anything this brazen, bold, I don't know what you call it. And I moved the next day to Nashville with no plan. One of his friends told me about a hotel that had just opened up, and they were hiring valets. And I'm like, well, I can park a car. I drove a semi-truck. So I go apply and get hired on. And I end up getting my first camera from the Lost and Found like 2 months later. So that's where Nashville started. That's where photography started.
Okay, so your first camera, what kind of camera was it?
It's a Nikon D80.
Okay. And Nikon D80. Wow, that's a legit camera, isn't it?
It was kind of middle of the road. It was, I think, brand new, whatever year that came out, probably like 2006, maybe 2005. It was like $999 or whatever.
And that was in Lost and Found?
Yeah, in a bag.
Wow. What hotel?
Hotel Indigo.
Okay.
So if anybody's looking for a camera.
Is everything good? Yeah. Okay. So
it gets better.
Okay, yeah.
So this camera had, I like looked at it. It had been there 90 days. And after 90 days, it's like legally, it's whoever wants it, we can just have it.
Job perk.
There were like 15 pictures on it, and they weren't very good, of people playing at the hotel. So that was of no help to figure out who owned this camera. And then there was an envelope, just a blank envelope with $110 in cash sitting in it. So my roommate, Ryan, the guy I lived with, he had bought a Canon Rebel, and he let me borrow it one day. And I didn't want to leave it in my truck in the garage at work, so I brought it inside. So a week later, someone's like, hey, you're a photographer, right? Do you want this camera? And I'm like, sure, because I'm a photographer. So I take it home, and a friend of mine, he did video work already at that point. I was telling him like what I got, and he's like, oh, you should buy a nifty 50. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally what I was thinking about getting. You know, I had no idea what that was. I had to Google it. But it's a 50 millimeter lens, just real cheap. It was $110.
Wow.
So I bought a nifty 50, and with a prime lens like that, like you can't zoom. So if you want to get close to something, you have to physically move.
Yep.
And I think that was having an understanding of composition from my art professor. I think that was just really enforced it for me. Like I can't just physically having to move around, I think is a really good thing for photography, because it's a lot. If you have a zoom, I've seen people do it. They'll just stand in one spot. They never crouch down. They never move forward or back. They just stand in one spot and just zoom in and out. And it just
You only
sucks.
shoot with prime lenses?
No, I actually have a 24-70 now, but I almost always shoot at 70. There's a whole reason I have that lens.
Yeah, because this one's 75, this one's 55, that one's 18.
When I made the leap to full time, I didn't know like what I was going to be shooting.
Yeah, so let's dive into. Okay, so you moved to Nashville with this art director, right?
Music teacher,
and you're like, cool. I park cars, and then where'd you go from parking cars? Was there a job after that?
So I worked at that hotel for 2.5 years.
Okay.
And at one point I had a kind of a side job as the social media guy. They didn't know what to do with social media, but I took pictures. So I I bought an iMac with my tax return from trucking, and they became aware that I was taking photos and they were kind of decent. So I would bring my iMac to the hotel one day a week and with a camera, I took pictures of the spaces or whatever, and they turned them into flyers and print ads and all this stuff. I made like $10 an hour for that.
Damn.
No direction.
Now, at that point, were you like, I should go buy a Porsche right now, or you're like, I should hold off?
Yeah, I mean, I was calling them like, hey, can you put this one on layaway? I want it in blue, you know.
Is that the color you'd get?
Probably green, actually. I don't know. Depends on the day.
All right, back to the hotel. So they're paying you $10 an hour. So they're obviously, they really value you.
And they gave me no direction. They're just like, hey, do stuff with all this.
Free creative
What's
control
funny,
and paid you 10 an hour. Wow.
You want to know what I did more than anything with that job? My one of my main responsibilities ended up being going on Craigslist and finding dating ads where people had put up an ad saying to meet them at the Indigo and had dick pics in it. So it was my job to report those. So they got deleted. So I got paid $10 an hour for about 8 months to look at dicks on Craigslist. It was pretty awful. Like, this is not what I...
And at that point, did you think, what if I start charging guys to take better dick pics?
Right.
You're like,
Gosh,
I got
these
the
photos
camera.
are terrible. The composition is so bad.
And for job security, you actually started creating your own.
I got really good at reporting ads on Craigslist, so we'll say. But it was funny.
By the way, somebody reported my ad to find a podcast producer because they were like, this is a scam to get people into porn.
Why do you have a dick pic? If you just need It was weird, man. I didn't really understand how to use social media for business at that point. So I definitely didn't know how to tell a hotel, but I knew that like they should be giving me direction. So it doesn't matter now. It was a learning experience, and it was cool that like, wow, I'm doing this. Like, I'm actually making money with this.
Big money.
Yeah. I ended up getting a promotion to valet supervisor, and
It's the nicest car you ever valeted.
I think it was an Audi R8.
That's Ferraris or Lambos or McLarens.
No. There
I
were
guess
some
it's Hotel
Porsches.
Indigo, so they would probably go to like another hotel, right?
Probably. I think it was still kind of a new hotel. There was a ZR1, a Corvette ZR1. That was like brand new at that point, and that was a beast of a car. The Audi, though, what's special about that is, well, there was a Rolls Royce once, but whatever, that guy was an asshole.
What do you do?
He was just really condescending to me and my buddy Tony. So I can't remember exactly what. He said something really kind of borderline racist to Tony. My friend Tony's black. And And I just remember like we looked at each other like, wow, this guy. I don't remember what it was, but we both got in his Rolls Royce and parked it at the top of the garage and like backed it in. And I think he got out and I just like hawked a big loogie in his carpet. Like, fuck this guy. Sorry. I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss, but anyway, yeah, the Audi.
So you were still really mature at this point.
Yeah, very mature. The Audi, two guys were in it, completely drunk, and they pull up, and they're like, "Yeah, man, take it for a spin." And I kind of laughed, like, "Yeah, I wish." Like, no, I'm serious. He's like, "Here's $20. I'm paying you to take it for a spin." I'm like, all right. So Tony wasn't working that day, but I called him. Like, bro, I'm about to drive.
You called him?
Yeah. It's like, bro, I'm about to drive an Audi R8. Do you want to go for a ride? And he's like, I'll be there in 15 minutes. So we take it out, and it was a 6-speed, but it has like the gated shifter.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was
V8
so
or V10?
I think it was just a V8.
Okay.
You know, all-wheel drive. We drive it all the way down, all over West End and back for like, I don't know, 45 minutes.
Out of, 7 hours.
But it's like, hey, the customer's always right. Yeah. So probably one of the more reckless things I've done. So it was cool. I've always liked cars, so it was kind of cool getting to park cars. But, the hotel industry is pretty rough on employees. And I reached my end and quit and left and ended up, I think I was a bicycle mechanic after that with B-Cycle, which is cool. Probably my favorite job ever, honestly. But it was like $10 an hour and 30 hours a week. But I really love my boss. We're still friends. He has one of my photos on his wall. I just got to hang out, drive a truck, move bikes around, fix stuff, talk to people, listen to music really loud, get coffee whenever I wanted. Like, it's kind of a dream scenario.
I love that coffee is always mentioned.
I love coffee.
In some way.
Coffee and bourbon.
So you're 24 at this point?
Yeah, I think so. Gosh, when would that have been? I think it was like 2012 that I left the hotel. So I would have been, hold on, let me do math here. I'm stuck at math, as you remember me saying. 26.
Oh.
It was 26 when I left.
Okay. So you're 26 and you're like, I guess I want to go work on bicycles. Like, did you leave with the bicycle job or did you?
Yeah, I think I went and applied there because I was the guy that ran the place. He went to my church and did that for a little while. Just not a lot of money. And I served tables for a minute at Famous Dave's, probably my least favorite job.
Was there a lot of dust there?
No.
I went to a Famous Dave's and it was just like covered in dust.
Real dusty?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's barbecue, man.
And I was like, get a Dyson, okay?
I worked at a Japanese place after that they had a sushi roll named after me.
What was it called?
Well, it was called the John Brown roll. I don't know why, but the guy was Korean. He thought that would be offensive. So they changed it to the John roll. I'm like, but John Brown was anti-slavery, like hardcore. Like he freaking killed people. He was that whatever. It's like, you're Korean. I'm not. It's fine. Like you can just name it the John roll. That's totally fine.
Is it still in existence?
I'm not sure actually.
What's the place called?
Go 10.
Where's that?
It is in the hotel that I worked at.
Which is like, tell people, what's this?
Oh, Hotel Indigo.
Okay, Hotel Indigo.
Well, I'm
Nashville,
sorry.
Tennessee.
Now it's the Aloft.
Okay, the Aloft, Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
There's a Japanese restaurant inside, maybe.
Yeah.
Named.
Maybe. I hope so. Yeah.
What are they called?
Go 10.
Go 10. And
G-O-T-E.
Go 10 has a John roll. Did you design the roll yourself?
I think someone would just like made me try it, and I guess I had the best reaction to it or something. was like deep fried and like covered in yum sauce or yummy sauce, depending on what place you go to.
Real Southern.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good.
Straight from Japan? No.
I sold the
Straight
heck
from
out of it,
Nashville. Would you tell everyone this is the roll named after me?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. So what's funny is that.
So even though you got paid $10 an hour, you got some pretty great perks at times.
I did. Yeah. What's interesting is when I was actually working at the hotel, Go 10 was owned by this man named Jed Suzuki. He was from Japan. And he opened one of the first Japanese restaurants in Nashville. Probably one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life. And loved the Beatles. And apparently when he was at home, he would put on headphones from his record player and lay on the floor with his hands like this and close his eyes and listen to Beatles records. So when I first started valeting, it was kind of slow. I mean, it was a new hotel. So I got to eat lunch inside the restaurant. And if a car happened to pull up, I would just go park it. But he would sit and eat lunch with me. He's like the owner of this restaurant. He was just super nice. And he ended up, I think I was still working there, but he one day he found out he had throat cancer, and 3 months later he was gone. So
like died?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it was pretty sad. I really like his family, and so this Korean man, I can't remember his name. He was really nice. He ended up buying the restaurant from Jed's wife because at some point she just couldn't do it anymore. They had owned it together for like a long time. Yeah. So it wasn't quite the same working there, but it was a lot of the same people. But it was really funny coming back and like working in the restaurant at the hotel that I had quit. Not on like the best of terms either.
So why'd you quit? Like, was there something that happened?
Did
B-Cycle end, or did you quit that too?
So B-Cycle was after the hotel, and I had made it up to valet supervisor, and they gave me a salary of a whopping $25,000 a year.
That was your salary as a supervisor?
Yes.
How much money do you make in tips though?
Well, I was a good boss, so I didn't keep tips at that point. But I probably made more before because they were paying the valets $8.25 an hour, and we got to keep the tips. I don't think they understood that most valet companies, they pay like servers. Like you make like $2 an hour or whatever, if you don't make under a certain amount.
You were making $25,000 a year salary and you didn't take any tips?
No, because I didn't valet as much anymore. I was a supervisor. So I was kind of like a manager, but they didn't want to give me that because I think that would mean they'd have to pay me more. Because we had a valet manager before, but whatever. That place sucked, man. So I was like the go-to guy. I was the guy that they could call at 3 a.m. I would show up and be happy about it. And all that across 2.5 years, what I learned was that it didn't fucking matter. I was expendable. And you know how I learned that? They would not let me, as a supervisor, hire or fire anybody. And yet they expected me to change everything for the better. In 3 months of doing that, one day I find out that they brought in a third-party valet company, and we weren't going to be the valets anymore. And they offered if you want, you can do housekeeping, I guess. And no, I'm done. I'm done with this place. So I've had a lot of jobs. I have had a lot of awful bosses, and with every job I've ever had, at least in the beginning, I tried very hard to do what was required of me and more, and to be the most positive person in the room. And it's funny how I think a good work environment starts at the top, because the places where I've hated working the most, it's been because the owners are jackasses or so stingy with money that they don't want to spend any, they don't want to pay people well, or they just don't care about anybody. They're expendable. And I think that's why I liked the B-cycle job the most, because that was not the case. Keith, his name was Keith, one of my favorite people I've ever met. He genuinely cared. If I needed something, he would get it. If I needed a day off, he would cover for me. And it's like, man, this is what a boss should be like. Because if you are going to ask me to do something, but you wouldn't do it yourself, like that's an issue. Even my very first job in right out of high school was at Lowe's in the building materials.
Yeah, I mean, you worked at Lowe's and Home Depot?
I did, yeah. And man, this giant man named Bob was my boss, and he was the most micromanaging guy I've ever met.
Isn't it amazing? You're like, do you ever really go like, how did you ever get this position?
All the time, yeah. It just, gosh, I've had a lot of bad bosses, and I've had a lot of jobs that I just hated, and they were just life-sucking. So it was hotel valet, B-cycle mechanic.
I had a trust fund girl tell me that I was a micromanager. I would check in every 2 days. So I would check in on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I would literally, a check-in would be like, hey, have these tasks, like your weekly task got done.
Right.
And I was like, unfortunately, you're just a spoiled little brat.
Yeah. You're very direct. You're incredibly direct. But I've never... I realized that really early on meeting you. And it's like, oh, because what you're saying is not condescending or mean or whatever. It's just like, you're just really direct. And I think people just have a hard time distinguishing between the two.
I think so many bosses have not been themselves, have not been transparent, have not been honest, and they're always like trying to like keep a facade up or keep something rolling. And so like I just tell people what it is. Like I break down our profitability on jobs for our staff. Like hey, this was a $25,000 project. $5,000 went to video, $3,000 went to photo, $5,000 went to design, $6,000 went to development. There's this much left over. I want to pay 30% taxes on that, and then I'll take the rest. Yeah. Like this, I made more than you, or I made the same amount. Cool. I own the company. I got the client.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not like, I'm never mad at like people for making a lot of money or making a lot of profit or using yes, I should make more. I'm the CEO. I'm the founder. I got the gig. I did all this.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I think less of your job or whatever.
See, I'm more like, is it okay if, it costs this much? I'm not really that bad, but yeah, I think when I speak, I often am being sometimes a bit more considerate of someone else's emotions than I probably need to be. So it's hard for me to be
but
that
you're
direct.
also able to feel that more than I am.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychopath.
Except when it's corporate. If it's corporate, I don't care. That's where I'm like, all right, I gotta embrace my Nathan side.
For example, when you hear like the COVID death totals, like do you feel something there?
Oh yeah, dude, I can't even go fishing anymore because I feel bad trying to put a hook through a living worm, because when you do it, it reacts, and I literally like feel something for a worm, dude. Like I can't even like. It's hilarious, but it's like embarrassing. So I don't know. I better buy some lures and invest so that next time I go on a fishing date with some girl, I don't have to worry about worms.
Yeah.
Because I literally can't do it. It makes me feel bad. A worm, bro. Like, so what is that?
When I hear the COVID deaths, like no part of me has any reaction. One of my mentors literally just died. Somebody I respect, a wonderful man. I mean, truly a wonderful man.
Yeah.
And like it sucks. But at the end of the day, like I'm glad that he died being out in the world and didn't die like locked up at his home. Yeah. At the same time, though, when I hear about the businesses that have died because of COVID, which is probably 3 to 6 times more than people have died, I'm like heartbroken by that.
See, I would argue that we need both, though.
Yeah,
I would argue we need people that care about both things.
Because where if
everybody was like you.
Oh, there'd be a lot of problems.
Right? And if everybody was like me, the same thing. Like,
well, people just cry all day long.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
No, I mean, it is, like, and I see the balance. But I was just saying, like, that just shows...
I need someone like you in my life to, at some point, like, I need that to move forward because I'll get stuck. or like not value myself enough, or just not know what to do in a situation where a tough business decision needs to be made. And it's like, you're one of those people I know I could call, and you're going to think maybe for like 5 seconds and then say, okay, do this, tell that guy to F off, do this, charge this much, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like I can't always do that because I don't know, man, I'm just a different person.
And I get worried when I see myself slipping into that a little bit, slipping into like being more emotional.
I don't think it's a bad thing. You're never going to be like me. The day you're like me is the day I'm calling a psych ward and be like, hey, I need to make a drop off. Like something's really wrong.
Because I've realized like the older I've got, the more, like I'm a pretty particular person about the way things are. And I've become a little more particular.
I am
and
too,
that
which is
worries
funny.
me. Like the other day, I was unable to eat dinner because I couldn't find my tie clip, and it was driving me crazy. I couldn't think about where is this tie clip.
That's all you can think about?
Yeah, for 4 hours. Like could not engage with anything because I was like, where
at least
is
you're aware
this
of
tie
it.
clip? And it's because I always wear a tie clip. I always wear this exact same tie clip. I wear it the exact same way. So when I put on my outfit, and I just spit on you, when I put on my outfit and I dress a certain way, I'm like, where is? And so it bugged me the whole night. I'm like, why am I not getting past this? Like that's an emotional thing.
The last 3 days, what have I been saying every time I go out? Like, because I didn't drive here.
Oh yeah, where are my car keys?
Yeah, like I flew here, so my car keys are in my bag upstairs because I don't need to carry them around because in my head I'm like I'll lose them in Dallas somehow, which is whatever. But I'm constantly like, oh shit, where are my car keys? Like, because my pocket's empty and I don't have my pocket knife either.
Yeah,
because I had to fly.
That
so
one,
like,
I think my pocket knife arrived today.
I feel naked without my keys or pocket knife. Yeah, we're all weird, man. Humanity is a weird thing.
All right, so B-Cycle Hotel, restaurant, and then Sandcastle Pictures. Where does that, was that before?
And then car sales.
Okay, yeah, car sales for who?
Mazda.
Ooh, which dealership?
It was Nelson Mazda downtown on Broadway, which is now, I think it's an apartment or condo, like tower with a Whole Foods in the bottom.
Yeah.
I was so happy to see that place torn down.
Did they suck?
They did suck.
All right, so I bought my car there, and it was like the worst experience. And then I like told him that I was going to destroy them, and I was like, I want $2,000. Like that's the cost I want.
Yeah.
And he like hops on the phone, and he's like, Nathan, you seem like a pretty reasonable guy. $2,000. I mean, the most I could ever offer would be $500. And I go, well, how the hell did you just build a $7 million facility in Cool Springs? Like, how the hell did you just do a $7 million renovation if the most you can offer somebody who you screwed over is $500?
Yeah.
And I was like, look, he was like, I was like, it's supposed to hurt. And I was like, 500 doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, 500 is like, we have clients that pay us monthly.
Yeah.
For website management and hosting and support and backups. And it's like, we messed up 1 month, so I'll refund 1 month. Like, it's like, $250. Oh, but it's not. If I refunded a whole year, I would feel something like, ooh, I really messed up here. Right. And so it was this ongoing thing. And he was like, all right, maybe he originally offered like $250. Then it went up to
I'm not surprised by that.
And so the best part was he was like, I got to like 1,000. He was like, all right, that's amazing. I mean, I don't this is amazing. And I was like, well, it's to you. And I was like, I'm still going to leave a 1-star review. And he's like, wait, so we're going to fix everything wrong with your car and give you $1,000 and you're going to leave me a 1-star review? I was like, yeah, I want 2,000. I was like very clear about that. And he's like, well, I don't know why I'm doing this then. And I was like, because you said you want to make it right. That's why you're doing it. I was like, I'm going to write an honest review. I'll write how you like worked to get it right once I like threatened you.
Right.
Anyway, so Nelson Mazda, they suck. Don't go there. I'm looking directly at the camera, so I hope it's looking at me. They were nice. They played Christian music in the lobby. That always gets me a little bit like, oh, maybe they're Christians.
Yeah, their whole thing was like, they were very subtle about the Christian thing, except for some ads, they would kind of push it a bit more. But it was supposed to be like non-commission, no pressure. But
how it works is only one employee is non-commission. Or was
So we
it?
were all non-commissioned. Here's what's funny.
Okay.
They hired me on. There's 15 of us salesmen on the floor. And I remember them saying like, wow, we sold more cars last month at this property than any month prior. And it was like 160 cars. But the way our pay scale worked, I would not make more than the base pay, which was like, I think it was 700 every 2 weeks, unless I sold more than 20 cars. So I'm
Just
sitting
an
there.
insane amount of cars.
Wait, there's 15 of us. We each need to sell 20 cars each. That is, I'm so bad at math, guys. That's 300 cars.
And
we
your
sold
best month ever.
170 or whatever it was. So my first month I sold 8. My second month I sold 9. My third month I sold 7. And the fourth month there I sold 1. And I just hated it. I remember, so actually this is kind of an interesting story. I was driving a white Ford Taurus at this point. And I remember waking up one day and it's like, wow, I wear khakis. I tuck in a blue polo shirt. I drive a white Ford Taurus with 3 latch systems in the back seat for kids I'm never going to have because nobody's ever going to want to sleep with me ever because I wear khakis, tuck in a blue polo shirt, and drive a white Ford Taurus. And I had kind of a quarter-life crisis, man. I put that car on Craigslist, sold it to a guy that turned it into like one of those flashlight cop cars at the mall, like security. And I went and bought a motorcycle the same day.
Oh,
And I had
what
never-
up, bad boy?
I had never ridden one before, ever. I borrowed a helmet from Josh at Ugly Mugs in East Nashville, which is like one of my favorite coffee shops. And I go pick up this bike, and my roommate's freaking out, like, you've never ridden one before? And I'm like, bro,
It's like a bicycle with a motor is
you
all.
can have my stuff. Like, it's fine. So I ride it to work, and then I ended up riding to Chattanooga, which is 4 hours away,
Your first week.
that night in the rain.
Your first week owning it?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
I know, man. It was awesome. I only had that bike for about 6 months. That was
What
all I
happened?
had. Oh, I ended up getting that white Ranger. I bought it. So I bought it. Maybe it wasn't that
But
long.
why'd you get rid of the motorcycle? Or were you just like, didn't get chicks like you were originally planning?
No, I ended up, oh man, I actually sold it to help a girl that was dating. It's probably a good thing though, because I probably would have died on it. But I hate that I sold it to help somebody that was cheating on me the whole time.
Was the guy better looking than you?
No.
Yeah, because I have this idea that like, if I'm gonna get cheated on, like if it's with Tom Brady, I'm like, I'm okay with it, I guess.
Yeah, Brad Pitt, whatever.
Yeah, I'm like,
That was a messed up story.
maybe if Carrie Underwood came on to me, I'd probably make the same mistake. It was like, that's how I look at it.
The bike's name was Brunhilde, by the way.
What?
Brunhilde.
What does that even mean?
It's a German name. I think it was from like a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. I can't remember.
I don't watch
where I got it
movies, so that's why I just went.
fine.
Shoo.
from. Yeah, I've had a lot of terrible jobs.
And relationships, it
I
sounds
have,
like.
yes. I
Yeah,
have.
so let's dive into that. I mean, what were you looking for when you were dating somebody? Were you looking just for somebody to hang out with you, or were you looking for like somebody you could build a life with and have kids with, and just randomly chose?
I actually think there's a big difference between, like in my head, I see this very distinct line between the types of relationships I had prior to jumping into my work full time and the types of relationships I had after. Because after, I felt like myself in more ways than I ever had before. And I felt really confident because I'm doing like this insane thing that is totally reckless. And it's pursuing a dream. And it definitely, like, there was a very distinct difference Which it makes sense. Like you meet somebody that just has some normal 9 to 5 and they're kind of insecure and they're not very confident. And then you meet someone that's pursuing a dream, even if it's insane, but they're like super passionate about it. Which one's going to be more attractive? You know, like it was very different. Gosh, there's so much to examine there. And I can say that again, like this side of having therapy, it's very different too. Like dating is very different. It's also very different in 2020 with a pandemic. So I feel every year that goes by, I feel like I'm more and more of who I'm supposed to be.
So you think you chose the wrong people because you didn't know who you were, and therefore you just
Oh man, I ended up with people who maybe they were super attractive, but just train wrecks. And oh well, if I can help them with this crazy thing that they have going on, maybe I'll like deserve their love.
How'd you find out that she was cheating on you?
We were making dinner one night, and this is back when iPhones first started having, or like people actually started using the password thing. It was like 4 numbers, you know? And I remember at that point, I thought it was kind of weird if people actually used it. It's like, what do you have to hide? Like, and she was texting a girlfriend, and I'm just standing by her. I'm not like trying to snoop on her phone, but I just happened to see this text to this girl. And I'm like, man, there's just something wrong about that. It just felt weird. I don't remember what it said, but it just like, I could not stop thinking about it. So we have dinner, go to bed. I can't go to sleep. I take her phone. I go to the bathroom. I somehow figured out the password, and I send a text to this girl like, hey, I miss your face. Send me a picture. And I wait 45 minutes in the bathroom. And I'm like feeling like an idiot. Like, this is so dumb. I'm going to have to apologize after or whatever. And then sure enough, it's a dude. It's a picture of a dude. And he didn't know about me either. So I let him know. It was wild. It was wild, man. So I ended up, I woke her up.
Name a woman.
Yeah.
Wow. She was like really
and she would delete all her texts. So there'd be like nothing there, like nothing to read or whatever.
So it's so, wow, I'm getting blown up. But like mine is just like, I never delete text messages. No. It's just like, just rows and rows.
And this was like 2013, 2014. So, yeah, it's fun.
I love that. Pierre is the guy who's working with the producer. He sent me a text and he goes, his camera's having focus issues. Like I was going to be texting in the middle of my podcast.
I love the effort. I love the effort. Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything in my life, every aspect, or just if you pick a topic in life that people experience in general, mine is always like, I've always experienced it in a crazy way.
Now, have you ever known what you wanted?
In a relationship?
Just period, everything.
No. Well, what I did, but it was not what I wanted growing up was nowhere near what I've actually ended up getting.
Because my life story has been saying, I want this and relentlessly going after it.
Yeah, it was not like that.
So like, I want a studio relentlessly, and here I am.
I'm so thankful that my dreams and ambitions as a kid did not work out, because the place that I've ended up is way better than anything I ever imagined.
Yeah. Okay, so car dealership, Nelson Mazda, they suck. And
they really do. Car dealerships in general.
Yeah.
I think Tesla is onto something with the way they sell cars.
Let me tell you the story of me working at Kia when I was 18 a little bit, because I do want to show a contrast. So Chris Bostic, who is the founder, he cheated on his wife and a bunch of stuff, but they got into physical.
This is all in the news, by the way.
He got in the cheating on his wife wasn't in the news, but working at the dealership, I found. Yeah. So they got in an altercation because they were both, to my understanding, they were both alcoholics, or they both drank a lot, and he slammed a door and hit her in the face, and she filed a charge just to get all his guns, because he had like a felony when he was like 18, And so he wasn't allowed to have guns or under her name or something. And so like she just called Brentwood police and whatever. So like confiscated all these guns from his house. And, you know, it's this big drawn out thing. And he was a douche, but he paid, because he was like 5 foot tall. And I think he was really trying to justify that.
Napoleon. Yeah, the Napoleon syndrome or whatever.
But I will say this about him, and I think he might still own the dealerships, or they might have been bought by another group or whatever. But I'll say this about the way it was structured: a lot of broken people that work at car dealerships.
Yes.
Everybody there on commission, but when you start on salary, and the salary is $30,000 a year. So I'm 18 years old. I see his ads on TV. I tweet him. And I'm like, hey, I want to work here. I go in there and I talk about how I'm like day trading and how I've made, you know, like a lot of money day trading. I'm 18 years old. And, you know, and I'm wearing, they're like, look at me, like, this kid is insane. And I'm like, yeah, so I think I would do well at this. And I'm like, yeah, probably. So they hire me. And so it's on salary. And so it's $2,500 a month. So maybe that's $35,000 a year, actually. It's a really good base salary.
For an 18-year-old?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And so, I mean, that was like, you know, I'd made like way more than that, but it was still like cool as I figure out what I want to do. And, you know, there were people there that made six figures from selling cars. And I was like, oh, I could probably do that. And so I get there and I realize like, oh, this sucks. Because what happened was I got the job, and then from the period of me getting the job to me starting was when the scandal happened.
Oh, man.
And there were 3 dealerships. There were 2 in a really bad area of town, really ghetto area, and then 1 in Franklin. And so the ghetto areas, they didn't really see much of a drop because like nobody really cared. But in Franklin, they were like, oh, we're not supporting this man.
Right.
And so they went from an average of 45 people visiting a day to 1 to 2 on a weekend.
When that was all happening
Yeah.
in the news.
1
I
to
remember
2.
that. I remember that was in the news.
So sometimes there'd be an entire day and not one person would come by. I mean, like literally, I mean, maybe one, but sometimes it's just zero.
Carnival
just
Kia, right? Is that what it's called?
Carnival Kia.
Yeah.
So he had a great plan: remove all the Carnival stuff, rebrand it, get a new spokesperson. And anyway, I don't know his story. I don't know where he's at now. I know that I know he divorced her, like his first wife, remarried somebody else that was like 20 years younger. And then, like 2 years after that, I was renting an office from a guy that owned a mortgage company. And one of his real estate agents was by, and I don't remember what happened. She's like, hey, can you drop me off at my car or whatever? And somehow is like, Chris Bostic is calling. I was like, you know, the owner of Carnival Kia? And she was like, oh yeah, we're like kind of seeing each other. I was like, isn't he married? She's like, well, it's not my problem. And I was like, first off, like once a cheater, always a cheater, I guess. Like is the point there? Because there was, I guess, no heart change when he married again. But second off, I was just like, that's disgusting. Like, why would you? How do you know about this and you're okay with it?
Everybody needs therapy, man.
And then I'm gonna tie this whole story together.
Yeah.
I recently had this this dude with like 27,000 followers on Instagram following me. Didn't follow a lot of people. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll follow him back. He like has an RV and rides motor. The second this goes out there, I'm probably about to get sued. But anyway, he's a really cool guy. And I see that he's living, like he's RVing with this lady. And so then him and I become friends, and I like still have this kind of like disdain for her because of that situation that I know about. And then he's like, yeah, she broke up, and it was like real shitty how she did it. And I was like, good. I just kind of was like, whew, wow, good. So anyway, that's a weird circle about cheating in car dealerships. But all that to say, they paid $2,500 a month, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And my strategy was, when I realized that I hated it and there was no way I was going to sell enough cars to get to like commission only, I thought, I'm just going to be like the pet here. I'm going to put balloons on the cars. I'm going to vacuum. I'm going to do whatever they ask me to do and just milk this, until I figure out what's next, which was starting an agency. But, okay, so now take me your car dealership and then car dealership to...
So, actually, when I was dating that girl, she was at the Art Institute for culinary. And I learned that they had a photography program. And I had been taking pictures mostly for fun, but, if you live in Nashville, half your friends are musicians. So they would want photos.
Or 3/4.
Yeah. Everybody's a musician, or at least trying to be. So I took a lot of photos.
I'm going to pause you for a second.
Yeah.
It really bugs me when you ask people what they do and they say, I'm a musician, when they are actually a waitress. Does that bug you?
No, I think that is a, how do I put that in words? I think it's a really good thing to do, because if you just keep saying you're a server who's trying to be a musician, I think mentally it's really healthy for you to say, no, I'm a musician, because it reinforces, like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is my goal. This serving job is just a side thing. It's not important to me.
It feels misleading, because it's like you're telling people you're a musician when you're not. Like, maybe you're a musician, but you're not. Like, that's not how you make a living. Like, people ask you, what do you do for a living? And it's like, oh, I'm a musician. Oh, and I work at Old Charlie's. And it's like, no, you work at Old Charlie's and you're trying to be a musician.
I think it's probably just one of those things where someone like you is going to see that from a different perspective from someone like a musician, because so many people have moved to Nashville with nothing, and they'll get whatever job they have to get, even if they hate it, because they're just trying to make it work and trying to figure it out. But it's all for the music. And for them to identify themselves as this job that they hate, which they know is just a means to an end, I don't think mentally they could handle it. I wouldn't be able to handle it anymore. Like, if I had to go do a side job now, serving tables or whatever, I don't think I could identify as a server.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Because my thing is I want to accept what's true about myself.
But I think it is true that
I want to wake up and go, I'm a loser. I'm broke. Because that's all my motivation to change it about myself.
See,
so when I say I'm a waitress, it's like, damn it, I am a waitress, because I'm not a good enough musician, or haven't got there yet, and I need to hustle harder. I need to make more deals. I need to learn business so I can be a successful musician.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is, whatever's holding me back from that record deal, I need that motivation that I am a loser so I can go change that about myself.
I think with creative people, it's just different. I don't think if you're a creative person and you try to look at your life in that way, I don't think it would necessarily work. I think the insecurities and confidence issues and all that stuff would just mess up the creative process. I don't think it would benefit the actual creative work to look at yourself in that way. It's just different. I think with creatives, musicians, artists, whatever, your identity is so intertwined with this thing that you do, because this thing that you do, you're like pouring yourself into it in a different way than you would with a 9-to-5 job, or something that you do. I know that you pour yourself into it, to what you do. I know you do. You like eat and breathe and sleep your business or businesses. But the way that, I'm not smart enough to like articulate this, but the way that a musician or an artist's identity is intertwined with what they do, because what they do, it's almost like they do it, they make this thing, they put it out there, and it's really like they're putting out their physical heart for everybody to look at or hear and judge, with extreme like critically. And man, it's just a very personal thing. I think it's almost more personal than relationships or even like sex or any of that stuff. It's like you're literally putting a piece of yourself out there, and you just hope that people will love it. And if they don't, it is like, I'm like trying not to cry right now just saying this. It is just like the worst feeling. Because it's not them hating a song or a photo or whatever. It's like, man, they hate me. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. So my thing is, I pour out the exact same thing into my things.
I know you do.
But I'm so confident in what I do. I have this like Kanye West thing about it where I'm like, I'm so confident about what I do that I'm like, I can't help that people are dumb.
Right.
I can't help that
I would argue not every song needs to be written from a place of confidence.
Okay.
Because you're
But I'm
not going to write a sad song feeling confident about yourself.
Okay. Wow. Interesting perspective. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, you're going to write that because like someone fucked you up and hurt you.
And then if somebody doesn't like that song, that hurts you even more.
It might, yeah. It's just different. It's a hard thing to articulate, and I'm not even a songwriter. I think I've dabbled enough in music to just empathize. I wish I was. God, I wish I could be a musician. I would, if I could be Alejandro, whatever, from Shaky Graves, I would in a heartbeat. Or Ray LaMontagne. Like just being able to physically move air in the way that they do. Like, it's like they're just giving it their all. I just can't sing like that. Yeah. It just doesn't work. But with my work, I definitely pour myself into it, but it's in a different, it's judged in a different way. Like photos and music are different. I almost feel like my work is a little safer.
All right. So, Sandcastle was after Car. Stonecastle was after Car.
So, yeah. So I go back to college at the Art Institute for photography, and some of my credits transferred. They really liked the work that I had already, or at least they said they did, and so I got some sort of scholarship. It was still going to be $48,000. That was half price because of credits and all this stuff.
Right, so it was $100,000.
It was normally like 85.
So it was more than Vanderbilt.
Something like that, yeah, like Belmont.
Well, Belmont's $30,000 a year, so
yeah, it was. Yeah, so yeah, you're right, because the teachers, I just started hearing these comments. Well, first of all, I'm in these classes.
So you started to go.
I went. Yeah.
Did you get debt loans for it?
I went for 5 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So I went, and my work, anything I did, whether it was in Illustrator class, which I had never used Illustrator before, basic photography. I honestly don't even remember the classes. It was like a full-time schedule, like 12 hours or whatever. Everything I did was better than everybody else. Just straight up. Some people were brand new. Like they had gone to this school, never used a camera. There was one guy, I'm still friends with him. He was there on a U.S. Army GI Bill. He just loved photography. The government's paying for it. And I was like, that's awesome. They also had a recording degree. And looking back now, I feel so bad for a lot of those guys because for whatever reason, I guess Nashville, or at least that school, which is not accredited, by the way, and no longer exists because it's one of those for-profit colleges that was like preying on people. So the music recording program there, it was mostly people interested in doing like hip-hop music, like doing beats, making their own studio, stuff like that. And I remember going to the main office and sitting in the waiting room, and there's a guy sitting next to me, and I like strike up a conversation with him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm here to do, the music stuff," and he's talking about the student loans he got, and it was like $80,000, I think, and he's having to take, before he can move forward, he has to take a remedial math class because of whatever his grades were from high school. It's like a required thing. And it's like, man, this just doesn't feel right, So I start classes, and the teachers would make these little comments sometimes like, yeah, you're kind of paying Belmont money or more, but not really getting a Belmont degree, Little comments like that.
So like they even felt guilty about it.
I think so. And so 5 weeks in, I realized like, man, I could buy so many cameras and like 5 more motorcycles with $48,000. This is stupid. And I had so many friends that were already doing it full time. So I quit. And at around the same time, that's when I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me. So my friend, Barry from Stonecastle, reached out and it's like, you know, he had heard about it or whatever, or maybe saw it on Facebook or something. He's like, hey, why don't you come hang out with me? I just got a new office at Marathon Village, which is an old, like 115-year-old car factory. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place.
With terrible air conditioning.
Yeah. So I go see this like baller office. I mean, it's beautiful. And he does like really high-end video stuff. And then he's like, yeah, why don't you come just work here, like on your stuff, on your photo stuff? Because I was going to like try to do photography. And then that turned into a week later, like, why don't you just, you know, well, it was like, why don't you come a couple days a week? And then it's like, why don't you just come here all the time? I like having you around because you're real positive. And then it turned into him giving me a job. And then that meant that I had access to all their camera gear, including a Canon 5D Mark II. So I gave my Nikon away. And I shot for like 8 months on this 5D Mark II. Made my first website. But it was still like, this is like a side job. And then Stonecastle is the other part of it. Like doing PA work, helping on videos, running errands, whatever. But it still didn't seem like, I still didn't feel like I could make a full-time living out of this, out of taking photos. And I don't know if you, it's about to get real. Like this is where like life happened big time. So I'm working there and one day I go to the office. He's having a meeting with some really high up people. And I just sit at my desk and I turn on my computer and I see that, I'm sure it's happened to you. Like you wake up one day and you get on Facebook and you see someone you know tagged in a comment from someone like, oh, I can't believe you're gone. Rest in peace. I'm so heartbroken about this. And I'm like, what? Like, this is my friend Amanda Day. And I see all these posts and I start to investigate, like, Amanda Day is dead? Like, what in the world happened? And she's a friend I knew from Shelbyville. And it turns out she was murdered by her fiance's uncle, and she had moved to Oklahoma. I had never known someone to be murdered before, so that was kind of a trip. And I was pretty upset, obviously. But a week later, a friend from high school, he was like a year or two younger than me, Corey Phillips, dies of cancer. And then like 4 weeks after that, a family friend, he was like in his 40s, I think, maybe like 40, married, he dies of cancer. And then in about a year, I lose like 10 people back to back. And around number 6, I kind of had like a weird job with Stonecastle. Like it wasn't like I didn't really have a role. We were like trying to figure out what I could do, but I didn't have like a skill set, you know. So he lets me go, and it was the right move because it didn't make sense financially to keep paying me every week, and I'm not really like doing something that is making things more efficient or like profitable or whatever.
Did y'all play with the idea of you taking photos during all the video shoots and then sending all that content to the clients and also posting on social media?
I wasn't that good yet.
Okay. Because that just seems like such an awesome thing to do if you were a video company, was to always have like photos of videos happening. Because the sets are cool, the lighting setups are cool, the people you're working with are cool. I mean, you were doing like huge stuff. I
think at that point it would have been harder to justify it.
Yeah.
Even because he was fairly new, like he's at this new level, and you know, money was important, and I don't think, especially at that point, there was no way to even come close to figuring out like an ROI on social media.
Yeah.
That was still kind of a wild idea. So he lets me go, and that means no more camera because I'd given mine away. That means no money because I didn't have much anyway, and that means no job. But I'm like determined to make something out of this photography thing. So I'd take a week off from anything work related. I'm like, I'm just going to relax this week. I like hang out with my roommates. We go get beers. I go on Tinder dates. Like, I'm just hanging out. I did go, like, I turned my part of my room into a little office, you know. And I decided that next Monday, I'm going to like dig in and figure this out. I don't know if that's a loan. I don't know if it's a grant. No idea what it's going to be, but it's going to work out. And so Sunday night, just, you know, a few hours before my first day as a photographer is supposed to start, I'm on a date with this woman from the Ukraine who had the coolest accent ever. It was freaking gorgeous. And I think she touched my hand once, and I was like, this is going well. And my mom calls. It's like 10:30 at night. And my cousin died that day. My first cousin, Erin. She was like 33. And my first thought is, you know, well, this week is done. And because it's going to be family, funeral, you know, all that stuff again. So what's weird, and this is the part that ties into me being a truck driver. At my cousin's funeral, I run into this guy named Sean. His dad and my dad were best friends growing up. His dad passed away a long time ago, probably like 10 years ago. So Sean took over his dad's business, and he also did like real estate. He has like a car collection. I mean, I think he, you know, at one point he had a house that had like 3 doors, and like 2 cars in each one. It was like legit. So I'm like, maybe you can give me some advice. And so I show him my work. I tell him what's happened. And I'm like, what do you think I should do? And he says, I think you should come get lunch with me next week. So what's funny about this is his dad's business was selling like high-end semi-truck trailers. The company I drove for bought some of those. I had a LG Voyager, which was a phone, and it like folded open and it had like a keyboard.
Yeah.
And it had a timer
All the
for
rich
the camera.
people.
Yeah. So it had a timer for the camera, and I could like open it up. And so I would set it down on the ground. That's why I have pictures of me with the entire semi, where you can see the entire thing. Because I would like set it down on the ground, and then like run back to the truck. So there's a picture of me underneath one of those trailers that the company bought from his dad. And what's funny about that, I remember people leaving comments on it on Facebook, like, wow, you should be a photographer. In like 2008 or whatever. So we get lunch. I tell him everything. And he's like, well, I know you. I know your parents. I could probably find you if I had to. Why don't you tell me what you need to get, how much it costs? I'll write you a check. You pay me back in 3 years, every month. And I'm like, for real? Okay. So, you know, I take a couple weeks and I'm kind of figuring out what I need to get. And I think the first run at it was going to be like $20,000. And then he told me the payment that would be each month. And I was like, hold on, let me get back to you. So I settle on $11,000. He sends me a check. I signed a contract with him to pay him back every month. I buy a Canon 5D Mark III, a 24-70. And the reason I bought that lens is because I had no idea what I was going to be shooting. So I was like, I don't know how wide I'm going to need to be or how zoomed in I'm going to need to be. But I definitely want to be able to do both. And I can only afford one lens. So I bought a 24-70. I bought a laptop, a new phone, a backpack, and a duffel bag. And I went home and I put all my stuff in my friend's garage. And I gave up my room in East Nashville. And I was ready to like sleep in a Ford Ranger, because the idea of going back to some 9-to-5 place again, I just knew like I will not survive
Ford
that.
Rangers are so tiny.
So tiny. Yeah, so to give you an idea how small my truck was, if my girlfriend wanted to ride with me and I had my backpack, it was like she had to hold it. Because it wouldn't fit behind the back seat. So I mean, it just didn't make any sense. Like you borrowed how much money to do what? Like there's no bank in the world that would have given me $11,000 because I did not have the things to show.
And do you feel like eternally grateful for this guy?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not everybody has a Sean that's willing to like write them a check and like, yeah, maybe they'll pay me back for that much money. Like $11,000 is a lot of money to me. But it's not a lot when you think about all the people that went to Belmont.
Yeah.
And work at
And isn't it sad that we'll give somebody a loan to go learn from people that have no real world experience and to be indoctrinated but not to learn, to be taught to but not to like learn how to learn.
Yeah.
And then they'll graduate with 6 figures worth of debt and blame somebody else for decisions they made. Like they made a decision to go to that school. Then we act like the fact that we act like colleges are good, like colleges have good intentions.
I think it's predatory.
And it's like, if colleges have good intentions, like if colleges have good intentions, why, when the University of Texas makes $100 million a year off their football team, do the players not get any of that?
I know.
Like if they have good intentions, why is there $100 million to go straight back to the school? And if college is about education, why do sororities exist? Why do fraternities exist? Because it's not about education.
Why is it that
it's just
a creative, going for a creative degree, studying painting or photography or whatever, why is it that it costs $80,000 or $100,000 when the average income for those people is like, $40,000 to $50,000?
Yeah. And why would it's just such a weird system. And the problem is that it's been so propped up. So when you have people that are $1.6 trillion in debt for college, that's paid for $1.6 trillion worth of people saying how great it is.
Yeah. And then it's like I have so many friends that they did really well in school. They're really knowledgeable at the thing that they studied, but they just can't find a job with it. Or the job that they can find, it's like, I cannot believe how many job ads I've seen where it's like they require you to have a 4-year degree, but the starting salary is like embarrassing. We can't pay you more because you don't have experience. But like, how can you expect someone to have a 4-year degree and only pay them like $22,000 a year?
Yeah. And this goes all to my initial point I've been making, where nothing matters except relationships.
Doesn't matter. You know how often I get asked about my degree?
What gets you the relationship, though? Like, what gets you the job is the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, you could literally go get a job tomorrow at Bridgestone Corporation where they require a master's degree if you know the hiring manager. Like, everything comes down to who you know.
It's not like a law that you have to have a degree,
and
except for maybe being a surgeon or a lawyer.
Yeah, of course. It's strange, man, and people, because they've spent so much money, because they're so invested into it, they can't turn from it. That's the issue. It's like they've already put the bumper sticker on their car. They already buy season tickets to the games. They already wear the hoodies. And if you say it any other way, like, John, here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay me $25,000 a year for 4 years. You're going to work for me for free. You're going to stress and maybe even have suicidal thoughts about getting good grade or doing good work at my company.
Yeah.
And at the end of the 4 years, I'm not going to guarantee you a job.
You can work at a college.
I'm not going to guarantee you a job. And I'm going to call you in 10 years and ask you to donate back to my university. It's a mental psych game. There's no
10 years.
Yeah.
I've had so many friends that like weeks after they graduated, Belmont was already calling them, asking if they want to donate.
And then we act like these people are good, or they're good for society. And it's like, it's something that really needs to be shaped up, and it's going to be shaped up. Like social media, YouTube changed the game, that it's a matter of time until these all fall. And I thought Corona was maybe the thing needed, But when you're Vanderbilt and you have a $2 billion endowment fund, it's not happening yet.
Yeah. I mean, at least with Vanderbilt, I would guess the majority of people are there for like medical stuff. And that's like amazing. And they can actually make decent money with it.
Yeah,
but I also hear about.
I think there's people at Vanderbilt for art degrees and media degrees, and like if they even offer the degree, that's the criminal part.
Yeah, and it should be, if you're going to offer something like that, it should be reasonable.
And same way with my business, like I can't go to a bank and say, give me a loan to start this, and I have no way of paying you back. Like I can't do that. And so if you're saying, I want to get an art degree, and we're saying, okay, well, the average salary of an artist is this, therefore you have no way to ever pay this back, or you'll really have to make some sacrifices in life, then we should not approve it.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. So I'm glad I saw that 5 weeks in at the Art Institute.
All right, so you get this loan, you get this camera equipment.
Yeah.
You move all stuff to a storage facility.
My friend's garage. Yeah, so I go to Chicago for about a month, and I stay with my best friend and her fiance just to kind of get away, but also, I don't know, it just felt right. I networked ahead of time as much as I could on like Facebook and Instagram. And so my first official full-time gig was this woman named Ashabi, and she's like a model, I think a student at that point, and a photographer, and maybe she was a barista at that point. She paid me like $125 to take her photo, and we ended up spreading it out over a couple of days. And the second day, she really, really, really wanted this one picture with this T-shirt. And it's so funny, man. I normally would never, ever take a photo with someone with like graphics or words on a shirt. Like I'm very particular about everything. But she loved the shirt a whole bunch. And I'm like, whatever, it's not a big deal. So we're by the lake. I forget what it's called, the Chicago Lake. And she's sitting on this wall. I lay on the ground. I shoot up. And she's posing. And, a week later or whatever, I'm editing these photos. And I love this one photo in particular. And I send it to her, and she, like, freaks out. She's like, she loves it too. Post it on Instagram. I posted on Instagram. And this was, like, the summer of 2015. And in November, I get a message from someone saying, like, hey, didn't you take this photo? And it's a Facebook post it's this photo, it's in black and white, but it's been shared, like, 30,000 times. And I'm like, what is happening? So the girl that made the T-shirt, it's just a Rebel Soul Collective. It's one woman. I think she actually has like a staff now. She's done really well. Her vibe is everything's black and white, or it was at that point. And so she took a screenshot of that picture of the shirt that she made, because I think Ashabi shared it with her, and posted it. And it went viral in black and white. And at some point, like for like 3 years, it went viral. It still kind of travels a little bit now. At some point, Alicia Keys shared it. Amy Schumer shared it. Adriana Lima. Juliette Lewis, the cast of Scandal. All these different people. And then like 4 million just everyday normal people shared this photo. Alicia Keys actually tagged me eventually. It was really weird, and we rarely got tagged. It's traveled a lot on Pinterest. It traveled a lot on Instagram. It traveled a lot on Facebook. And it was like this awesome yet frustrating thing of like, man, everybody is seeing this photo, but nobody knows who took it, and nobody knows who the model is. So everybody, like even the girl that made the shirt, and friends of mine, all these people, if they ever saw it, they would comment like, hey, John Brown took the photo. This is the model. This is who made the shirt. And that was really helpful. So that's how Alicia Keys like tagged me. So it travels around. And one day I'm at an Arby's with my brother in Shelbyville eating a beef and cheddar. And I get an email.
Rich.
Right? I get an email from some
Let's
weird
on
name.
it. Just rub it in everyone's
I know.
face.
Yeah, big spender. I get an email from some strange name at condenast.com. And I'm like, what is Condé Nast? And it was like 2 sentences. I don't think there's any punctuation, no capital letters. Like, hey, we'd love to use this photo in next month's issue. Can you send it to us? So I Google Condé Nast. They own all the Vogues and Vanity Fair or Cosmopolitan or something like that. And I'm like, oh, well, who is this person sending me an email? And I look her up. She has like her own 100,000 plus or whatever following on Instagram. And she's on a gondola in Venice. And I'm eating a beef and cheddar at Arby's. And she's wanting to put this photo in the September issue of Vogue Italia, which I didn't know until later. The September issue is like, it might as well be the first issue every year. It's like the big one every year. So I'm like, yeah, you can definitely have it. And I didn't even ask for money because at this point, I don't think it would have been much anyway, but at this point, it's like the idea that this is going to be published with my name attached to it for the first time in the biggest fashion magazine in the world. And I'm like, hell yes, this is awesome. So what's funny is I'm a former truck driver who knows nothing about fashion and got a camera by accident. And this photo is in the biggest fashion magazine in the world, attached to a manifesto written by women in Italy saying that they need more rebellious women through things like literacy programs and job training programs. It was real badass. And I have like this super, like one of the most iconic feminist photos ever. And I'm a dude who knows nothing about fashion. It's very strange.
What did the shirt say?
It says strong women intimidate boys and excite men. And you would not believe the comments. Pretty bizarre. I don't think it's that profound of a statement. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like if you're a dude and you get bent out of shape about women that are just confident with themselves, and that's kind of who it's talking about. But I read some of the craziest stuff. And at some point I realized like there's no point in even trying to interact with these guys because they're clearly like just super insecure. They would say things about the way she looked, say things about her body. They would say that, oh, it looks like she's a dude because of the way she had her like a plaid shirt tied in front of her, like in a knot. And somehow that became like a phallic thing to them. It was crazy, man. It was like such a weird mixture of feelings because it's like, wow, for whatever reason, my photo of a woman wearing this shirt took off, even though there's been plenty of
It
others.
was your first ever shoot as a bird.
Yeah.
That's, and that just shows like God's hand just like letting you know that he's ever it, right?
It was very, it definitely felt like this is what I'm supposed to be
Now,
doing.
when it went crazy, did you think, oh, I'm about to get tons of bookings?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely felt like, especially when Alicia Keys tagged me, it was like, wow, I'm about to make so much money. And I think in total, I've made like $7 from that photo after a few people bought prints.
How?
I don't know, man. I got maybe 100 more followers when Alicia Keys tagged me. I think it's just that the photo people think about
They want the
t-shirt.
message.
They want the t-shirt.
The message.
I think she's done really well selling t-shirts, which I'm super stoked about. I probably should have instead of saying, hey, yeah, use this however you want, probably should have been like, hey, can I get 5%? But I don't know. It's whatever.
She said, I want 50% and then negotiated down.
I know.
You're like, let me start with the lowest possible offer. Can I get 5%?
There probably was some sort of missed opportunity there. I really don't think so, though.
Yeah. How weird is it, though? You've had a photo that over 500 million people have seen.
It's pretty strange.
I mean, I'm just doing the numbers. If you're like the average social media following somebody has, times 400,000.
Yeah, because more people saw it than actually shared it. You know. Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Like, think about how many things you see on a daily basis and then how many you share.
So that's the other thing. I got emails from the most random people. I got mostly women. I got emails from women in Brazil, Mexico, Honduras,
You speak
New
a little
Zealand.
closer to the mic.
Sorry, New Zealand, Ireland, Germany, Spain, all these different places. Women just sending me emails saying like how much they love that photo and how it spoke to them, and then sharing like parts of their story and how they felt like they were represented in that picture. It was wild. Makes me like I'm feeling a whole bunch just saying that.
Ever think that just shows like what a greedy businessman I am now. Do you ever think about emailing them back and being like, for $4,000, we can do a photo shoot and I can create an image?
Here's what's funny too. So I have
know how
a list.
awesome that image is? What if I create one for you? I'll fly to you. We'll do a photo shoot. Because see, the thing is that people thought you were so busy. Like you were so booked up from this that they're like, oh, he would never do a photo shoot with me. That's what they thought.
Probably.
Like this table, for example, like the guy who built Joe Rogan's table in his studio built this.
Right.
And when I messaged him to ask like, hey, how do we go about like ploods going into the table? Because I think that looks really cool and classy. And I was like, you know, he was like, oh, well, you know, we're talking about it. And I was like, man, I wish you could build mine. I've just stirred your butt for, you know, a while. He's like, actually, I have a little gap if you wanted to get this knocked out.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it was a lot more than if I'd like went any other route.
Right.
But it was like, it's cool. It's got a story to it. And it's 1 degree of separation from somebody who I look up to a lot and I really enjoy their content. And that almost has something that's worth it to me.
So I think I will end up profiting from this photo, but that's because I have found I have a list of businesses or just large entities that are not individuals who have used my photo for business purposes. And
you have it copyrighted.
I do. Yeah. That's been pretty interesting. It's very strange. Yeah, it's very strange. And it's been a good lesson. I'm kind of glad it happened early on because I learned a lot from that whole experience, especially about copyright. But,
all right, so photo goes viral.
Yeah.
You're now a full-time photographer.
Right.
What of the last couple, how long ago was this? 3 years ago?
This is 2015. It started.
Whoa.
It was in vogue in September 2017.
And so what's it been like since? Like, what has your photography journey been like? Where is it going? What are you learning? What are been your biggest takeaways?
I have learned that having a camera in your hand and just being kind to people and being a positive presence can get you into the most unusual places. I've photographed a kidney transplant at Vanderbilt. I photographed Don Henley from the Eagles. I photographed a hotel downtown for like an insane amount of money. And then, you know, music projects.
How many album covers have you shot?
Not a whole lot, but probably like singles and some albums, probably, you know, about a dozen.
That's pretty cool.
I discovered like this, I guess more about myself really, but I really love to do things in camera and I don't like to use Photoshop. So I discovered this whole series of work, this technique with multiple exposures and whatever, and I called it superimposition. And that's been a really big hit. I've sold prints of it. It's gotten me just an inch away from being in galleries. I just, not quite there yet, but I'm really close to being in galleries, I think. I have an art firm, in New York City that found me through that work, and they're pitching 16 photos that they selected to commercial properties for licensing agreements. So I get money every time a building wants to put one of my images up on a wall. I've shot commercial stuff. I've shot Ram pickups. I shot a coffee shop in Nashville for a year on retainer. It's been pretty wild.
What is that like you shot Barista Parlor, we should just say the coffee shop.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly snobby, incredibly famous. And pretty much everybody goes there as just a creative. Like there's no businessmen there, for the most part.
I actually, I don't know where that idea kind of comes from. I think the owner is very particular about how they make their coffee.
Anyway, the point I'm getting to is a bunch of photographers go there.
Right. So they're Instagram heavy.
The fact that you were the one.
Yeah. The owner really likes cars. And a friend of mine had this crazy, like, custom built, insane truck. It's like bagged. It looks like something out of Mad Max. And I don't even know how to explain it.
What's his
I let him
Instagram handle?
know
People
at
can
Lambo's Chop Shop. You'll see it. You can't miss it.
at Lambo's Chop Shop.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, that's how we find it.
Yeah. So I let him know, like, hey, we're going to come to Barista Parlor with this truck if you want to check it out. And he let me know which one he was going to be at. So we go and he checks it out. He goes for a ride in it. And he knew that I existed. I had talked to him a few times. I think I had been Facebook friends with him. And, if I ever got a coffee, sometimes I'd take a picture of it. And I get a message a few weeks later like, hey, can we get coffee? We go get coffee. And he's like, it seems like you love the same things that the Barista Parlor is about. Like you're into cars and you're very nice, like, and you're really good at what you do. I feel like, I'd love to have you shooting my stuff, which is pretty wild because most of their Instagram posts are just reshares because everybody that comes to Nashville goes to Barista Parlor and they take pictures. So he has content forever. But he wanted to be able to get photos of like new drinks that are going to come out or stuff for the website, things like that. So it's kind of funny, like just going and buying a lot of coffees ended up getting me work later on. I worked with them for like 8 months, made thousands of dollars and got lots of free coffee. And I have a ton of portfolio.
Yeah, and their coffee is like $800 a cup, so it's a really big deal to get free coffee.
It's really good stuff. I think my favorite drink was like $6.50, and they make it. It's each cup is made individually. It's not just in a batch or whatever. But that's why people go there. It's not supposed to be an in and out Starbucks on the go kind of thing. You're going for an experience and you got all this vibe, and they have like record players playing music constantly. And
so it's so East Nashville.
Yeah, and then each location has a different vibe, and it was a photographer's playground for sure.
Yeah, I prefer Germantown because it's the easiest parking.
I love that place.
Because parking's like the biggest deal to me, and like parking in the Gulch is difficult. Parking in East Nashville is difficult. And so at least Germantown, there seems to always be like enough space for street parking.
East Nashville has more parking, but it's just normally more packed.
Yeah.
But yeah, Germantown is a lot easier. I love how bright it is inside and the lights and all that. Pierre?
Yeah, it's right there.
I'm going to get a refill myself. That's okay.
Of what?
A little bit of this, but a lot of that.
No, I think we're about to wrap up. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. John Brown, you're about to think. Oh, you were so close to the camera. You're so close. You're so close.
Short arms.
What does the next 5 years look like?
No idea. I know that this next year, I'm going to be busier than I ever have been. I don't know how I know that, but I think 5 years is just really not a very long time. And just looking at all the different things I've got to do, the different people I've made connections with, I feel like I have everything I need now to just push to a new level. And I'm really excited about it. And even just in my personal life, like I'm healthier than I've ever been, which is oddly enough because of the pandemic, because it took away any type of work and the ability to interact with people, which I learned that those are things that I really need. And so I had nothing else to do but to focus on my health emotionally and mentally. And I worked through a lot of stuff because the last 13 years since my mom got sick has been a roller coaster. And I've probably been to, that 1 year had 10 people, but I've probably been to like 50 funerals in my life. And my mom's health has been up and down. So I've had a lot of things to feel, and I've not always known what to do with that when I'm feeling stuff. And it just stacked up for 13 years. So it's nice to finally be on the other side of that. And that's where I feel like there's this new line for me where everything's going to be different. Like dating is different, work is different.
Because you're healthy.
Yeah. And I didn't realize how much I was carrying around because I was busy.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to like sit and think about it. But the pandemic took all that away, and I was literally just sitting at home, losing weight and losing function and not being able to like even send an email because I'm just so depressed.
Canceling photo shoots that people that are very important to you.
Exactly.
Make.
Yeah, and I remember the day that I think it was the last time we talked for a while. I remember saying something because you were like, "But this is work. Like you need this. This is work. This is like money." And I'm like, "Man, there's no amount of money in the world that's going to fix me right now. That's going to help with my problems." And man, that was so true. I'm so thankful to be like on the other side of that, because now it's like, all right, I know that I'm of value. I know that my work is awesome. I know that people are going to like being around me. So yeah, well, I'm just going to make this next year the best one ever. And there's no reason, I can't work with anybody, like any scale, any agency, company, whatever. I've shot a little bit of everything. So I'm already starting to get some like pretty large things lining up. And I'm excited about that. And I think all the years of saying no to certain kinds of work because I just didn't want to do that have really paid off. Because I creatively, I am very particular about what I'll do and what I won't do. And commercially, like, people just want a certain level of quality. And I can do it. So it's going to be a great year.
Yeah, you're able to distinguish between commercial and creative.
Yeah.
Or maybe before you looked at everything as creative. And so you turn on commercial.
I mean, there's a creative aspect, but at the end of the day, it's like a company needs, like they have guidelines and stuff has to fit within it. Yeah. Unless it's like something new. But then it's like maybe, there've been a few times where a company has come to me wanting this particular thing, and then I come back and say, well, what if you did it this way? Do you think that would be better because of A, B, and C? And then ended up charging more, and then they ended up getting something better than what they originally thought, which that was a really cool experience. That had never happened before, but it just seems so obvious to me. Like, yeah, wouldn't you want to have photos highlighting the personality of your people versus like everybody posing the same exact way? Which this is not like a new thing. It's not like I invented that.
But it's learning to storytell that. It's learning to talk to your client about that.
Yeah.
Like people, something I'm amazed by, people will spend $500,000 to sponsor the Preds, and then they'll spend $5,000 on their website. When the reason they sponsored the Preds was to get more people to go to their website.
Which is a $5,000 website.
Yeah. but they'll spend $500,000 to sponsor the Preds, and they don't even think there's anything wrong with spending $5,000. People undervalue and overvalue certain things in very odd ways.
Yeah.
And having a conversation with them about that, whether they listen or not, is always a really healthy thing.
Yeah.
Where there's no hope is when somebody won't have a conversation about it. We're like, this is the way they look at it, and that's it.
Well, that's the same thing I've had to remind myself too. Is like if somebody comes to me and after I give them a quote for what they want, they almost like are shocked or laugh at it or whatever, and I have to justify my value. You know, in my head, I'm thinking, I've spent the last 10 years learning how to use this thing, and I've invested probably, you know, $20,000 to $30,000 into it at this point. And I do things that nobody else can do, which is why you found my work to begin with.
Your estimate's way wrong, by the way.
What?
So you've invested how many hours into photography?
Oh my gosh.
So then times that, times your hourly rate, which is probably around 100,
that's way
125 an hour, then it's way more than $30,000. It's probably a few million.
I mean, maybe, yeah, maybe.
So 30 grand is not
physical,
shit. If you said, "Oh, I've spent 30 grand in photography," I'd say, "Get the fuck out of my office." I want somebody who knows what they're doing.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
What
to me,
you've
though.
spent is you spent 10 years worth of time at $100 an hour.
Well, that's what's funny too. Is I don't have. I've done a lot with very little gear. I am very mobile. I've always been very mobile. I felt pressure for a long time, like, oh, I need to buy like all this stuff. I need to get pro photo lights, and they're $1,000 a piece, and that's not even with a stand or a modifier or whatever. I felt that pressure for a long time until I watched a mini doc about Platon, who's like the most famous photographer in the world right now. He has one camera for in studio, one light, one umbrella. Everybody sits on a box in front of white. And that's it. And it's like, oh, so he just does the things, he does things the way that he thinks they should be done.
Yeah.
That changed my life.
Because people are buying him. They're not buying like a dude with a camera.
But
or they'll just go to their uncle.
But still, I borrowed $11,000 from a family friend, not even being sure if I was going to be able to pay him back. That was a very stressful experience for me. And that was a lot of money for me.
Yeah.
For some people, it's not. But, you know, that was a lot of money for me. And, you know, my camera body was $3,000. At that point, no car I had ever owned in my life had cost $3,000. So my camera body without a lens was more valuable than any vehicle I had ever driven before. So if that gives you an idea, like that's why it's such a big deal.
Yeah.
And what if I hadn't been able to pay him back? Not only is it like a debt, but it's like a family friend.
But it was the only way forward because you had no other way. Unless you were, I guess, renting a camera for every gig.
To go back to 9 to 5 and try not to kill myself. So, you know, I hear people say, like, you're too expensive. And it's like, no, you just can't afford me. Because I've come a long way and I've learned a whole lot almost completely by myself.
Or
to make this
you
thing,
don't see the value.
Yeah.
It's not always I can't afford. It's like I don't see the value.
Yeah. And you know, it's like, what do you? I always wonder, like, what do you? If you think I would do a shoot for that much money, can you tell me how someone would make a business charging that much? You know,
yeah. So
it's like, how many shoots would I have to do a year?
So from a business perspective, I say that's not my problem. That's the first thing I say, and then the second thing I say is, you can't use logic to argue with illogical people.
No, you can't.
So like I posted that I was looking for a podcast producer. Over 65 people emailed me. And of the 65, 3 were like, you're going to have to come up on that hourly rate. And I was like, no offense to you and your skill at all.
Right.
But I just want you to know there's 62 people that are okay with this rate.
Right.
You know, and it's like, so as a business decision, it's like, it's not like I make anything from this podcast. Like, you know, it's like you're clicking a button and maybe eventually we'll get more where they're like, you know, we're pulling up stuff on a TV and we're, you know, a little more approaching than like clicking between cameras. but you know, it's like, I understand, like, this is what it is. This is the budget. And I would explain that to different contractors we work with for different projects. You know, they work so hard in selling me, and I'm like, look, I'm not paying this bill. The client hired me, and you're part of the proposal, and I gave this much budget for the proposal.
Right.
My sister's husband, Evan, is a wonderful videographer, and there was a client that needed a 2-minute video walkthrough done, and he gave like a good, better, best scenario, you know, like using Red cameras or using like, you know, A7Rs, right? Like, you know, like all the way up. And like the cheapest option I think was like $22,000.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I can't present this. And he's like, why? And I was like, because my entire website that's going to make them millions of dollars, and we're one of the best companies in the world at doing this, is going to be 25.
Yeah.
Or maybe for them it was going to be like 18.
Yeah.
So I can't come for one single video that's on one page of the website to cost more than the whole website. That doesn't make any business sense. That makes me look like an idiot. And I don't care what you think your value is worth. This is just like, I got to go find somebody that'll do it for $5. And, you know, it's like, so there's always that conversation where people like, they personally take, like creatives personally take it. And it's like, it's just like, this is the game.
Yeah.
And in things where I see the value, I saw the value in paying a lot of money for this table, because like Joe Rogan, like the guy that built Joe Rogan, somebody I really look up to, built this table, and he had an audio engineering background, so I knew he could like, I knew he understood more than just like craftsmanship. I knew he understood like audio, and I knew he understood a bunch of things.
Right.
And that he actually cared about the work he did, and that like this table's like still reinforced underneath it, and like some really like he wanted to do a good job, and that really mattered to me.
Yeah.
And I get it, and like that's why you gotta just find the right. It's just always about the ebbs and flow, and never getting upset about it, never taking it personally. Like, this is the ebbs and flow. But I came to this conclusion: I can't try to be rational with somebody who's irrational.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it'd be like trying to argue with a crackhead on why they should stop taking crack.
Right.
Like, it's kind of gonna go nowhere.
Yeah.
And so you have to just release all of that, and then like, all right, on to the nets. Because it's really troubling, the things people say. Like, I was hoping to pay, you know, like I got about a $50 budget for my website. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, I've tried to come back at, you know, okay, well, I can do something for that amount of money, but it's going to be like, I'm going to have to take away these things.
Yeah, and that's a good way to approach it too. So, hey, I'm willing to work with you.
Yeah, because I've had some, you know, and this is all stuff like under $1,000. I've had some bad experiences where I've given people discounts because maybe I just need to like buy some groceries that week or whatever. But then they end up
That's what I've always got in on.
Yeah, they end up being like more demanding than the people that have actually paid like my rate. And I'm like, well, this is not how. So I don't. I usually get a sense of people pretty early on. So yeah, I'm not afraid to say no. I've said no a lot. And I know that's cost me money at some points, but I think my body of work that I have to show, because I didn't shoot everything that I was asked to do, it makes me stand out.
Yeah.
I didn't shoot girls in bathtubs of milk with flowers around them. I didn't shoot babies. I didn't shoot model like hopefuls with snakes wrapped around them. Or like, you know, hot girls in front of cars or whatever. Like, it's fine. If people want to do that stuff and they enjoy it, that's totally cool. But it's just not my thing. And I think the more particular you get, the more your style and who you are as a person is going to show in your work. And if you have a niche or even just a couple, you're going to be sought after and you're going to get paid more versus being like the everything guy. I'll shoot anything.
Well, see, this thing, you have the portfolio.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
Thanks.
And so then the only goal becomes getting more people to see it.
Yeah, I just got to go.
And so it's a complete game shift.
I got to go shake, well, can't shake hands right now. I guess fist bump and stay 6 feet away or whatever. But
well, it doesn't, you know, it spreads via droplets, not via handshakes. But
yeah, I mean, I feel good about it. I think actually the guy that gave me the loan, he even said it pretty well. It's like, it sounds like what you're about to do is similar to what I do with real estate, and that, you know, the first 3 years or 3 to 5, I think he actually did say 3 to 5 years. it's like you don't have clientele yet. You don't know anybody yet. You're starting from scratch. So, after 3 to 5 years, that's when it's going to like change and it's going to be profitable or whatever. I think I hit that mark in year 3 where I technically was profitable. It wasn't like a lot, but like I made more than my expenses, and that was wild to me. I mean, my first year I made $15,000 and somehow I didn't die.
Yeah, that's
My second year I made 25 and somehow I didn't die. In my third year I hit 40. Of course I had like 10,000 in
and almost died down.
Yeah,
You're like,
car
and
wreck.
yeah.
So like every year has gotten better.
Yeah.
But I don't want to shoot 1,000 shoots a year. I want to do like bigger things. And then within that, like projects that I just really love, regardless of how little or how much money they are, because that's the stuff that is good for my heart and it's good for my soul. And it's usually the stuff that you see first on my website. It's like my favorite work to do. And that usually leads to bigger work because people see it and they're like, oh, this dude knows what he's doing, or he's different, or whatever people say. I've heard a lot of funny things. I don't know how to describe my work, but other people do. I've heard that it's very clean. Recently, I heard the word ethereal, which I had to Google that because I forgot what it meant. And that was from another photographer.
What does that mean?
It is like of another world, I think, something like that. And somebody else described my work as painterly. I was like, that's dope. Because it's just the way I like things to be. I don't really look at other photographers' work. I don't follow a lot of photographers on Instagram because if I look at somebody else's work, I usually see things that I would do differently, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that critical of other people's work, but I also don't want to shoot stuff the same way that everybody else is doing it. And I think it's easy to do that if you're constantly looking at it. Because in your head, like, well, this is what a photo is supposed to look like because I've seen 1,000 photos that look like this. So I try to look more at things that I love. I listen to a lot of music. I look at paintings. I watch movies.
Do you find that your favorite is not always what the world thinks is the world's favorite?
I wouldn't know. I really wouldn't.
Because my least favorite photos of your photo shoot you did of me in that studio like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that about 20, I think I said to 20 people, and like 18 of the 20 all picked my top 5 least favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing, too. I discovered that no matter how attractive I think someone might be or photogenic, every single person I've photographed has had at least some insecurity about how they look. Every single person. It is pretty wild. But, a lot of the stuff that I shoot is a bit more abstract, or it's either one extreme or the other. It's either like, this is who this person is, or it's like this insane, trippy, painterly, ethereal thing, apparently. So I've had people message me and say, like, wow, I've known Tony all my life, but this is the first photo that I've seen that I really feel shows who he is as a person. And that was like wild to hear. And what's funny is I don't even think that's really about the photo. Like, I have a rule that I have to get coffee with people first and hear who they are and what their story is and what they're trying to do or what they're working on before we even figure out how I'm going to shoot, because I want to know who they are. I don't want to photograph a stranger. I think that's like disingenuous. And I think it's weird. Like, having your photo taken is like the most uncomfortable thing ever. So why would you want just some complete stranger to do it? Wouldn't it be better if you actually know the person and why they do it, and that they care about it, and that they care about you, and why they even do the thing that they do? Like, wouldn't it make it a different experience? And it totally does. It's still weird having your photo taken, but at least if you're going to do it, at least it's going to be fun with somebody that you feel comfortable with, and you know that they're going to try to do something that has never been done with this camera and me and music playing and coffee over here. Like, it's like an experience, which I think it should be. It's not a passport photo. I don't shoot passport photos. So it's wild that, I'm 34. I've had this really insane life.
Hey, wasn't your heart? Tell me about your heart. Wasn't it inverted or something crazy?
Yeah, I have a backwards heart. Just born that way. So it's spun around, and you feel it on the right side instead of the left. So I'm that one weirdo at, if there's ever a Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, and I think that ties into all this stuff. I haven't quite figured out how. I don't feel like a normal person, but I think that's okay. I'm very empathetic to the point that, it's easy for me to cry every day. And I think that's okay. I care about people so much that when they tell me stories and things that they've experienced, it makes me cry as if I'm the one that's experienced it. And to end up with a job where part of my job is to hear what people have to say, and I get to feel it because of how I'm built. And then I get to share that with the world through photos. It is like the perfect job for me. And it's so weird that it took me this long to realize that.
See, that's what people need to hear. That clip right there of you talking about this. If every client saw that before ever looking at your photos or anything, they would know they want to work with you.
I think so too. All of my work, like 99% of my work, I've gotten from people talking about me, word of mouth, friends asking friends, and that alone makes me want to cry thinking about it. Because, man, there are so many photographers in Nashville, literally thousands. It's not that big of a city. We have more photographers than we need. And a lot of them are very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I don't trash anybody. Just saying I don't use Photoshop, that's not an insult to anybody that does. I'm just saying I'm very particular. And to be in a city with that many, with an oversaturated population of photographers, and to be doing it full time without a side job at a coffee shop, I think is pretty crazy, especially when it's like I just am a dude that moved to Nashville and got a camera from the Lost and Found, and I just try to be nice to people, and it's very surreal. Like, my life is, I just never would have expected.
Now, do you ever apply that to okay, cool, I'm really good in this market. What happens if I go to this market? Do you ever think about like Dallas, for example, to think about oh, cool, I'm probably right now the best photographer in all of Texas.
I've thought about, I considered moving to Chicago when I first started. It's too cold for me. And I think Nashville is unique in the way that it works with community. I think if I had moved to New York and started from scratch, I don't think it would have worked out the same for me. I think if I had moved to Chicago and started from scratch, it wouldn't have worked out the same for me. But now that I'm where I'm at now, with the work I have to show and the cool things that have happened, I'm not scared at all to pitch my work to someone in New York or Chicago or LA or Dallas or internationally. Not worried about it at all. So I think I'm very grateful for Nashville being so kind, because it's such a small city. You can connect with people so easily. I'm one connection away from probably anybody at any label. I just got to ask.
So as we wrap up, what's your website?
johnbrown.photography.
What do you want people to take away from this?
life is really short, and I don't think there's any job worth being miserable over. And I get that not everybody is in the same position that I am, and not everybody has the same resources that I've had, or the same friends or whatever. But life is really short. And, you know, it's even if you got kids or whatever your situation is, I know that stuff makes it harder, but it's just.
Did you ever think that death was coming for you when you saw everybody around you die?
No, I've only felt that looking at a path of not changing. Like if I had stayed in just that idea, like I need to keep this job because I need a safety net around my life, and I need to get a 401k, and I need to get health insurance, and I need to get a savings account. I saw death when I made that stuff a priority because the life that I was protecting was fucking miserable. So it's like, what's the point, man? I'd much rather risk sleeping in my truck pursuing something that I love versus ever going back to that. And I don't think everybody should do what I did. I don't think it's like it worked out for me because it was supposed to. I think everybody's path is going to be different. But man, if you're miserable, like you got to change something. Go to therapy. There's plenty of resources for that for everybody, sometimes free. Tell your boss to fuck off if they suck. Like nobody, there's no job worth hating your life over. And if you have a job and they treat you like crap, it's time to find a new job. I'm not saying quit right now and like without finding another one first. Like there's just a thing you're going to know. What is it about
when people are in terrible jobs because they're losing their worth? They start to like think that it's not a terrible job because they've lost so much of who they are. Right? I mean, is that something you would say? Like I see people that work terrible jobs for terrible people, and they've completely lost themselves, like gained 20 pounds and are miserable and are not sleeping and everything else. And because they've lost so much of themselves, they're like, I'll just keep doing it. Where 6 months earlier, before they'd lost most of themselves, they were like, I'm going to quit.
I think people get into a spot where they just don't see possibility anymore, where they don't see options outside of their current circumstance. So if you can't see options out of this miserable place that you're at, then of course you're going to stay there because you don't have any hope. And I know what that feels like. I felt like that most of 2020. I felt like I'm never going to take a picture again. I'm never going to be in a relationship again. I'm never going to gain that 10 pounds back. Like I felt no hope whatsoever. And I think, you know, it's hard when you have kids and you're in spots like that because you're not just caring about yourself. But, you know, one of my friends from high school, she has four kids now. I think she had 3 when all this stuff happened. Married this awesome guy. He had an accident, got hooked on painkillers, became a drug addict, and like really screwed up everything, like their mortgage or all kinds of weird stuff with money. She divorces him, and she has 3 kids, puts herself through school while working a full-time job. And I'm sure she had help with it, but like, damn, you did all that with 3 kids.
What was when I look at what changed, it was getting a counselor. What gave you enough energy? Yeah, what gave you enough energy, or like you were in a terrible place? What took you over the line? You
mean this year or just when I started? This year. I think just recognizing like this is going to lead to a place I don't want to be, and just being aware of it. Like I am not doing well.
So you saw it got it even worse. You thought it could get even worse.
Oh, it would have been, yeah.
Because well, it would have been. When I heard from you, I was like, I don't think it can get any worse. This is heartbreaking.
It would have been me killing myself.
Yeah, that's right. That is worse.
And it's just not an option for me. I've had that what is called a suicidal ideation. So it's not like a full blown suicidal thought. Like it's not like I had a plan or like I was gonna do it. It's more like almost like an ad on a YouTube video just flying through my head. And I had that happen twice. And once was this year, but it was a lot worse this year. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, yeah, clearly this is not going to work the way things are right now. So I need to do something about it, and I need to do it fast, and I need to be very aggressive. So it turned out like my roommate's brother is a therapist. Started talking to him twice a week. My cousin was in the NFL. I called him up. Hey, it took a while to call him because I felt nervous and scared about asking my own blood if he could help me. And of course he said, yeah. And I go down there and he teaches me how to work out for 20 days because that helps with emotional and mental health, like being physically active. So I got to, it's so wild. I got to train with an elite athlete. But that helped. And I drink more water. I eat better. I pray every day.
You drink a lot of coffee.
I drink a lot of coffee.
You say more water. What did you drink before? Like you've had like 1 cup of water today. So was it no cups before?
I don't put any blame on the coffee for any of my life circumstances. I love it. Yeah, I drink more water because that is important. So it's, and I'm not saying that the things that I've done will fix everybody's issues, but at some point, you have to look in the mirror at yourself realistically and write it all out. Like, where am I? Where am I at? What is holding me back? What can I change? Who can I reach out to for help? Because we have the internet. There's no excuse, man. There's a resource for everything now. You're the only person that is going to change your life. Nobody else can do it for you. So I just, it was just another one of those moments where I've got to do something drastic if things are going to be better.
So what do you say to people that don't feel like they can get there?
Man, I give them a hug.
Yeah.
And maybe, if I tell them my story, maybe it'll be helpful. I would hope it would be. And just encourage them to keep talking to people.
Yeah.
That's step one. You have to open your mouth. You have to speak it into existence.
Thanks for being out here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Anything else?
No, man, that was fun. That time kind of flew. I hope I didn't sound like a moron.